All right, good afternoon. Welcome to the House Environment and Transportation Committee. We will start with House Bill 1322, Chair Pena-Melnick, Natural Resources, Vessels, Carbon Monoxide Warning Labels.
Mr. Chair,
Welcome.
may I read my panel?
Please do.
Thank you so much. Go ahead. Have a seat right here. Yes. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and Honorable Environmental Matter Committee members. Thank you for having me and for allowing me to present to you House Bill 1322. House Bill 1322 requires the gasoline-powered vessels manufactured after July 31st, 2007 display a carbon monoxide warning label on the boat. Why is this important? It's important because carbon monoxide can kill you. And you're going to hear today from Matthew's mom, and she will tell you what happened to him. And these deaths are preventable. As you know, Maryland is defined by its abundant water sources. I don't have to tell you that because you deal with all those bills here, and you know it better than all of us. From our roaring rivers in Western Maryland to more than 3,000 miles of coastal Atlantic beaches and the world-renowned Chesapeake Bay, we're truly blessed to have water that has contributed not only to the recreation, but to the growth of our state. With our water-built state, we must also ensure that those that are on said water are safe, and this is one way to do it. In preparing, Mr. Chairman, for this bill, I actually reached out to the Maryland Department of Natural Resources. They actually helped me draft the bill. The bill as is in front of you with its amendments are consensus amendment from all the parties involved. They're in support of the bill. In addition, I communicated with the Marine Trades Association of Maryland, the executive director, the American Boat and Yacht Council, the director of standards and compliance, the National Marine Manufacturers Association, state policy and engagement manager, the Maryland State firefighters that are in support of this. And there's a woman that works there. Her name is Teresa, and she's listening. And she is a strong advocate for carbon monoxide detectors and protecting our Marylanders. I also reached out to the U.S. Coast Guard, the Office of Auxiliary and Boating Safety, and finally the mother, to ask for her permission to name the bill after Matthew. Everyone is in support of the bill. We drafted the bill in a way that built consensus. DNR also stated that they will add this information to their website and that they will also put it on their social media channels. In addition, they will coordinate with the boat dealers to distribute the information, and the enforcement, the officers will focus on education and will issue warnings for the first year. We went online, my staff and I, to see what would it cost to purchase these warning labels. On Amazon, you can buy them for $9.99. On the National Marine Manufacturers Association website for $25. You don't have to pay $25. In addition, a lot of the fire departments give them out free. So this is very simple. There's no fiscal note. It can save a life. And I ask for a favorable report. Thank you so much. I want to thank Andy from my office who worked on this bill. He's one of my fellows and who did a lot of this work. And thank you for the family. Thank you so much. Want to go next? Yeah.
Good afternoon. My name is Alita Ball, and I want to thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak with you all today. Forgive me. Today on House Bill 1322, or Matthew's Law. Matthew Thomas McHale was my son. He passed away tragically and senselessly from carbon monoxide on November 5th, 2016. He was only 25 years old. Matthew was employed by Prestige Yacht Management here in Annapolis. He was working by himself on that Saturday when his supervisor instructed him to winterize a 32-foot twin inboard engine boat that had already been shrink wrapped. To add to our family's heartache, A non-functioning carbon monoxide detector was found later by Moshe on the boat. This bill is really mostly about the safety of all the Maryland boaters regarding the dangers of carbon monoxide, a toxic, poisonous, colorless, odorless, and tasteless gas, often referred to as the silent killer. Carbon monoxide is dangerous when it's breathed in because it displaces oxygen in the blood and deprives the heart, the brain, and other vital organs of oxygen. Large amounts can overcome you in minutes without any warning, causing you to lose consciousness and suffocate. According to Matthew's text, he had several common symptoms of carbon monoxide poisoning. He told his supervisor that he was dizzy and had difficulty performing simple motor functions like texting. One of his very last texts that day, and it is, I quote from Matthew, "I'm not going to finish this one tonight. The fumes from the engine have me feeling really dizzy. I actually fell over trying to walk to my truck. This isn't good. It's hard to type." His supervisor's response to Matthew was to shut it down, meaning he went back on the boat to turn off the engine. And this is when he lost consciousness and passed away from the toxic fumes. This tragedy is 100% preventable. And so very sadly, if only he had been aware of the symptoms from carbon monoxide poisoning, he could still be here with us today. Our family will never be the same. Matthew had an older brother, Ryan, and a younger brother, Peter, who's here with us today. The bill will remind the Maryland boaters the dangers of the carbon monoxide, the poisoning. Our family wants to prevent anyone else from going through this kind of senseless tragedy. There were no more texts from Matthew that night. Later that evening, after midnight, Matthew was found unconscious on the boat under the shrink wrap with the engine still running. Please vote in favor of House Bill 1322, Matthew's Law, in remembrance of my beautiful son, Matthew. Thank you.
Ms. Ball, thank you on behalf of the committee and for you and Ryan and Peter. It's just incredible that you're able to try to make sure there are no more Matthews in Maryland, that you're able to make this constructive and a way for positive change. So thank you for sharing your story. And I think we can turn to Senator Riley.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, Vice Chairman, members of the committee. Former State Senator Ed Riley, on 2 different occasions in my last term, we brought this bill forward because of how important it is.
Oh, good.
In my research, we are very fortunate. This is the only fatality that we've been able to identify in the state, but it is not uncommon. There were 2 young sisters from South Carolina who were in a cuddy cabin underneath the deck who died of carbon monoxide poisoning because the awareness wasn't as strong as it should be. Parents are upstairs enjoying the weather, having a cocktail, while their daughters were perishing underneath. Heartbreak that doesn't need to happen. My bills didn't pass last session, and I kind of scratched my head, and I just hope that my efforts during those years allowed the good delegate to have all those positive responses. Because 4 or 5 years ago, they were not positive. But now that this has become an important issue for the legislature, and with the help of the good delegate, I'm very confident that this bill will go through and will save lives. It's good to be with you. Thank you.
Senator, thanks for being here. Any questions for the sponsor or her panel? Delegate Foley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Chair Pena-Melnick, for bringing this bill. Thank you very much. Thank you, ma'am, for your family for, as the chairman said, your advocacy on this. Very important. I want to be clear that I intend to support this bill, but I do have a question. My question is, what have you given any thought to what the notice would say? And do you feel that maybe you should put some language in the bill about what the notice should say?
So the warning labels are
Yeah.
pretty standard, and they
Okay.
have been approved by a lot of these organizations that I mentioned and the fire departments. And I have, my staff was supposed to give some, on your desk, some samples of it. For example, it says, warning, carbon monoxide can cause brain damage or death. Engine and generator exhaust contains odorless and odorless monoxide gas. Signs of carbon monoxide poisoning include nausea, headache, dizziness, drowsiness, and lack of consciousness. Get fresh air if anyone shows signs of carbon monoxide poisoning, and then see owner's manual for regarding carbon monoxide poisoning. So it's very standard.
Okay, and it lists the symptoms, that's what I was getting at.
It
because-
does.
Yeah, okay, great,
Thank you for the question.
thank you.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Delegate Jacobs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And, Delegate, I missed the very beginning of the bill hearing, and I don't know if you addressed, there were a couple of letters with favorable amendments, and one talked about size of the boat, whether it was, had to do with any lengths of boats. And my other question is this both for outboard and inboard that would have a gasoline engine? So if it
This
had an
is-
outboard engine or an inboard engine, would both?
So thank you so much for your question. I did discuss at the beginning that it is for gasoline-powered vessels, and that the amendment that we submitted to the committee are the amendments that were requested by the people that I outlined. So that everyone is in support with the amendments.
Okay,
Thank you for your question.
thank you.
My pleasure.
Any further questions? Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. Good to see you over here. That
Thank you
concludes the
so
bill hearing
much for having me.
That concludes the hearing on House Bill 1322. We will turn, if we have Delegate Hill here, House Bill 858,
Thank you very much.
Mattress Stewardship Program Establishment. And if you have a panel, please bring them up.
Mr. Chair, there are witnesses here, some favorable, some with amendment. How would you like the panel to come up?
If you have a panel, whoever you want to stand alongside of you, bring them up. And if you don't want them to stand alongside of you, don't bring them up.
Good afternoon. For the record, Terry Hill. Mr. Chairman, it's a pleasure to be before you. Madam Chair, Vice Chair, it's good to see you, members of the committee. We're presenting House Bill 858, Environment Office of Recycling Mattress Stewardship Program Establishment. And I want to say at the beginning that I appreciate this committee for allowing me to sit before you for another year to talk about the same issue that we've been here before, and to let you know that with the stakeholders coming together around this issue, we've done something a little bit different because we know that this committee has a lot of waste management issues before it. And what we've done differently this year is we've tried to put dates on the bill where it would go into effect further down the line, knowing that there may be other stewardship bills that you need to consider for other products, and we wanted to give you the opportunity to maybe pass a couple of stewardship bills and know that you won't be burdening the Department of the Environment, because they could do one, and then without you having to come back and reconsider, once completed, they could then move on to the other. So it would be sequential, and we are putting ourselves second on or third on the list as you see fit. Basically, recognizing that right now around the state we have a landfill capacity that is projected at best to last about till 2040, and that mattresses and box springs are the largest, or probably among the largest, waste products that are not accounted for in our waste stream management program. They typically end up either on the side of the road or in landfills. And trying to address this problem, we have reached out to look at extended producer responsibility programs that have been in place since about 2016, when I first came before you with this issue in several states with success, and both borrowing from the success of those programs and trying to write legislation for Maryland that would learn from those programs and put better practices in place. We have the bill that is before you. And I'm going to stop there and leave it to you all and to the rest of my panel to talk about, but I believe that we have the support of all the stakeholders. There have, again, been some amendments that have been offered by some of the folks who have been at the table, and we're prepared to continue those conversations as you see fit.
Good afternoon. My name is Grant Johnson, and I'm here today on behalf of the International Sleep Products Association. I appreciate the committee's time and attention on the issue of mattress recycling. ISPA supports mattress recycling and has formed the Mattress Recycling Council in 2013 for the express purpose of administering programs in states that adopt this sort of legislation. Legislation is necessary to ensure an accessible program with a level playing field, an enforcement mechanism, and antitrust relief for producers and mattress manufacturers to come together as competitors to set up and fund the program. In a nutshell, HB 858 provides for a statewide system with a transparent and sustainable fee structure to fund the program. With the requisite state oversight, no-cost collection for consumers, with a convenience criteria approved by the state, and standards for recycling mattresses and education and outreach also approved by the state. All of this is done through a publicly available program plan process. The legislation also provides for an annual report on the program, plan goals, and continuous improvement. ISPA supports the Maryland bill, but believes that few amendments may be necessary to ensure a viable program. These are outlined in more detail in our written testimony. The provisions regarding phasing out of the assessment, depending on the profitability of the program, should be eliminated from the bill as they're confusing and inconsistent with the nonprofit nature of the program. The reporting requirements are regarding illegally dumped units, renovation rates, and closed-loop recycling must be eliminated from the bill as they are not within the control of the producer responsibility organization, so it would be impossible to comply with. And the current antitrust language only covers state antitrust laws and must be expanded to include federal law. This is commonly referred to as a state action doctrine. I see I'm past my time, so I'll end there. Thank you for your consideration on this program. We support HB 858 with amendments.
Good afternoon, ENT Committee. I'm Kitty McElroy here as president of Maryland Recycling Network to support HB 858. I bring my experience managing mattress recycling contracts at the Northeast Maryland Waste Disposal Authority. I am not speaking on behalf of the authority. MRN members include public recycling managers, private recyclers, nonprofits, and the public. We thank Delegate Hill for her continued leadership in sponsoring this bill. Mattresses are safety and fire hazards. They take up a lot of landfill space, don't compact well, create flammable air pockets in landfills, while springs get tangled in processing equipment, delaying operations due to costly repairs. However, they are recyclable. I would like to acknowledge the trailblazers, Baltimore City, and the counties of Frederick, Howard, Montgomery, Washington, and most recently Charles, who have implemented mattress recycling. These programs are successful, and we believe they can be replicated across the entire state. However, many of them are struggling to keep up with costs. Since January 2022, 5 jurisdictions have spent over $1 million on these recycling programs, while diverting over 4.2 million pounds of mattresses and box springs from disposal. Now, Maryland has 21 years left of landfill life. This is unsustainable. Mattress recycling is a manual labor-intensive process requiring expensive equipment to dismantle, process, and bale its components. Collection of whole units, demanufacturing, marketing, and downstream transportation are not fully offset by marginal revenues from commodities. This bill will take the financial burden off taxpayers, eliminate fees at collection sites, disincentivize material being illegally dumped, and grow local jobs. Jurisdictions can divert much-needed funds to other public services and kickstart these programs statewide, especially in rural areas. The steel springs from our end-of-life mattresses could very well contribute to the reconstruction of the Francis Scott Key Bridge. We already have this program for tire and paint recycling. This bill complements those laws, ensuring difficult material is responsibly managed. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Kevin Daly, president of Turbo Hall Mattress Recycling, in support of HB 858. My company operates the largest mattress recycling facility in the Mid-Atlantic, out of Baltimore, Maryland. We have been successfully recycling mattresses for over 6 years now. During that time, we've recycled over 300,000 mattresses and box springs, resulting in the diversion of approximately 15 million pounds of waste. A recent analysis by the Mattress Recycling Council shows that each mattress recycled saves 500 gallons of water, conserves enough energy to power a house for 3 days, and reduces greenhouse gas emissions equivalent to driving 60 fewer miles. In 2023, Turbo Hall expanded its operations into a new 18,000 square foot facility. This year, we are seeking an additional 50,000 square feet to accommodate the burgeoning mattress recycling needs in the state of Maryland. At our facility, mattresses are cut open, broken down into their various components. Polyurethane foam is baled for use in carpet padding, insulation, soundproofing, and furniture manufacturing. Steel springs are processed for scrap metal. Wood waste is separated that can be used for mulch, animal bedding, and soil amendments. Shoddy felt pads are reclaimed for use as protective blankets and industrial absorbent pads, and natural cotton and coconut fiber are recovered for composting. As you can imagine, mattress recycling is a very difficult process, requiring well-trained and well-compensated employees, large amounts of warehouse space, and expensive machinery. Turbo Hall has invested significantly to support Maryland in its recycling efforts and to provide good jobs, paying well above the minimum wage with full benefits. However, for mattress recycling to succeed in Maryland, it's critical that we support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. I want to thank you for your doggedness with this bill and for working with some of the advocates, it sounds like, in the offseason. I do want to ask, though, Mr. Johnson described the number of amendments. Delegate Hill, what do you think about those amendments?
Some of the amendments we've had discussion of, some of them we haven't, and we're still in conversation, and we'll be in conversation with the other stakeholders. We've got a stakeholder group of close to 20 folks. And, you know, the committee knows a lot more about this issue than I do, so I have no objection to anything that the committee feels would be necessary to move this forward.
Okay, thank you. And then for the Maryland Recycling Network, we've had other waste diversion bills in here where you all have been maybe even unfavorable, but at least favorable to amendment because of concerns about the impact on county or municipal programs. So if I'm Washington County and I have a mattress program already, why is this bill not bad for me?
The mattress bill? Sorry.
Why is it not bad?
Yeah, why is this bill not bad for me if I already have a program in my county?
Well, I would say I don't feel like I'm in the capacity to answer that question as it relates to other bills that.
No, I'm asking about this bill. I was just using that as a prelude because I think your testimony is that this bill is good for counties that already have mattress recycling programs. Is that right?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Why is it good for counties that already have mattress recycling programs?
It would, well, so I'll back up, give you a bigger picture from my perspective as with managing mattress recycling contracts, and speak to a couple of the counties in Baltimore City that I manage those contracts for. Commercial mattress recycling is especially expensive. I know that many jurisdictions are struggling with that cost specifically. Generally, they're able to find the budget, and I'm talking about existing programs. Generally, they're able to find the budget within their general funds for the municipal residential material coming in. However, the commercial costs are really expensive for them, and some of them, as I'm aware, have scaled back because of that. So this would essentially fund commercial and residential mattress recycling in the entire state. So that's why we are supportive of it in that sense. I hope I answered your question.
Sure. So unlike some other waste diversion programs, this one is good for the places that already have programs, right?
Yes, yes.
Terrific. Delegate Morgan.
So I'm going to go in the opposite direction. For the very rural counties,
who don't have a lot of money in the general funds to operate from. How does this benefit them, and how do they take it out of the general fund when they're paying for a number of other bills that are on everybody's plate up here right now?
So the fees that are, there are fees at the purchase, and those fees must be set to support the program. And those fees are distributed to the jurisdictions so they can carry out their programs.
Okay, then, thank you, Dr. Delegate. Another part of that question, for the monies that have not been set aside so far, and you're going to get a new mattress or replace a mattress, I mean, I guess I'm just trying to figure out the math.
Yeah, so it's like a lot of programs when you start them, the fees that are collected now at the purchase are paying for mattresses that you're already done with.
Okay.
Right, so there's a forward cost, and but that's just the way it's. So the choice is, if you want a program like this to be funded, or a tipping fee when you drop it off, or an upfront. So there's usually the nose or a tail. And after reviewing different programs around the country, it seems like a nose makes a lot more sense than a tail.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Delegate Healy.
Thank you. I don't remember this particular question about this bill. We've seen it before, but I wondered about not just where mattresses are bought at retail or whatever, but mattresses that are used in hotels and hospitals where there are lots and lots of beds, right? And there's a turnover that happens all the time because they're in business. Are they part of this program? Are they going to be paying into it so that it can take care of all their stuff too?
Yeah, well, actually, they would be at that sale. So a peer-to-peer sale is not included, but any other type and I actually had information I had presented here before that I have since had counter information. So I had been previously told that high-level hotels, when they get rid of their mattresses, usually after about a year, they sell it to the next level down hotels. I've since spoken with someone who runs these things for Marriott, who says that's not really true. They don't downsell them. So I think there's a range, but you're right, their turnover is much, much higher. So in that sense, unless as the program were being developed, unless the department or the state decided otherwise, that mattress might actually receive fees more than once. And that.
But they are covered by the bill.
No, they are covered by the bill.
Thank you.
Okay, any further questions? Okay, we have additional favorable testimony virtually. We'll start with Carolyn Parsa, Maryland Sierra Club.
Hello? Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Please go ahead.
Okay. Good afternoon. I'm Carolyn Parsa from the Maryland Sierra Club Zero Waste Team, speaking in support of House Bill 858 on behalf of the chapter's 70,000 members and supporters. A mattress stewardship program would divert used mattresses from landfills and incinerators for recycling and refurbishment, conserving resources and landfill space while stimulating local mattress recycling businesses and reducing disposal costs for local governments. It provides for public education, and it increases the convenience of mattress recycling for Maryland residents. More than 75% of a mattress can be recycled when it's taken apart. Steel springs, wood, foam, and fabric are all recyclable, yet currently only 5% of used mattresses are being recycled nationwide. But a mattress stewardship program would incredibly increase these recycling rates. A program in Maryland could potentially divert 70 to 85% of mattresses from landfills and incinerators. In fact, Maryland's 2014 Zero Waste Plan recommends such a program. The following states, California, Connecticut, Rhode Island, have successful programs, and Oregon launched theirs just last month. When I visited a mattress recycler in Baltimore, I was amazed how much space that used mattresses took up, stacked way up high before recycling, and then how little was left over afterwards. I was also impressed by the skill of the recyclers, and I could see how this bill would create good jobs. We would thank Delegate Hill for her leadership, and commitment to stakeholder consultation. And it's time we act on this well-researched and refined bill that would benefit local businesses, consumers, local government, and the environment. We urge a favorable report. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll turn to Scott Castle, Product Stewardship Institute.
Okay, Chair Corman, members of the committee, my name is Scott Cassell. I'm the CEO and founder of an organization called the Product Stewardship Institute, or PSI, and I'm here in support of HB 858. I want to first thank Delegate Hill for championing the bill and having the stamina here to keep improving it over the years. Our organization is a 25-year-old national nonprofit that works on all extended producer responsibility policy solutions for over 25 consumer products, including mattresses. And we have worked, and I personally have worked with the mattress industry and multiple stakeholders over the years to develop mattress bills in the 4 states with existing laws, as was just mentioned before, Oregon, Connecticut, Rhode Island, and California, as well as many states working on bills like Maryland. So this bill does build on the lessons learned in those 4 existing programs. Even so, I'd like to recommend 2 issues to consider, and these are things that I'm hearing from others in the other programs. 1, ensure all mattresses, regardless of condition, are included in the program. Currently, I believe the fee covers only mattresses that are collected, transported, and recycled, but not disposed. So in other states, mattresses that get wet, dirty, or otherwise not suited for recycling have become a financial and management responsibility for local governments. And I look forward to working with the industry and others to rectify that. Secondly, rather than a uniform assessment on all mattresses, consumers buying mattresses that cost less to recycle should actually pay less for the fee than others. Currently, those buying a small mattress is the same fee as those that have a large mattress, and having materials fully recyclable doesn't seem to matter whether they're recyclable or not. So
terrific. Well, we appreciate you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate your testimony. Thanks for
today.
being with us. That concludes the bill hearing on House Bill 858. We'll move on to House Bill 947, Delegate Tolls, Local Government Charges for Paper Carryout Bags Limitation. If you have a panel delegate, please have them join you.
In here. Thank you, guys. Thank you. I think this is my first time in this committee. Thank you so much. So y'all be nice. Just get myself situated here. Alrighty. Okay. Chair Corman, Vice Chair Boyce, my seatmate, best seatmate ever, next to Chairman Ben Barnes. Tell him I don't want to get in trouble. But colleagues in the Environment and Transportation Committee, hello to you as well. House Bill 947 is a very simple bill. It does not make any changes in the current paper bag in the current paper carryout bag laws. As stated in the bill, House Bill 947 only states that if a municipality enacts a local law that authorizes and requires a retail establishment to charge for a paper carryout bag, that it provides to their customer that the charge does not exceed 10 cents. It's a very simple bill. Currently, that's state law, so we're really not changing state law. Some municipalities charge 5 cents, some charge, the max I've seen is 10 cents. Currently in Prince George's County, for example, the current law states that as of January 1, 2024, Prince George's County prohibits all retail establishments from providing plastic carry bags to shoppers, and with certain exceptions, shall charge at least 10 cents for each paper carryout or reusable bag. Keyword, at least, which means my constituents, your constituents, don't have a consistent cost, and they should know what they are going to pay regardless of the store. And again, it should be consistent. Hence the reason for the bill. Charging at least 10 cents means that a retailer can charge 10 cents today, 25 cents tomorrow, and even $1 for a carryout bag. You can go in one store, they can charge 10 cents, another store can charge 25 cents, another store can charge 50 cents. There, again, is no consistency in terms of the store, even within that county. Most retailers at this time, are charging 10 cents or less. Even the Maryland Association of Counties will concede in their testimony, and I quote, "No county currently imposes a fee higher than 10 cents. It should remain a local decision." Guess what? That's what this bill does. Currently, that's what it says. And no community deserve to have it up and down, just kind of change arbitrarily without any consistent cost. Secondly, the Maryland Association of Counties indicates that the bill will undercut the ability of local governments to work with retailers. Again, I disagree with that, because local governments do not get the revenue from the bag fee. It goes to the retailers. Again, local government or the state of Maryland does not get the money that comes to retailers. So why should the people of Maryland suffer from inconsistencies and costs when they don't even get that? In my humble opinion, the state of Maryland should get a small percentage considering our budget shortfall, right? But that's not this bill. B, the bill will not impact counties that do not have a bag fee ordinance in place. I think you may hear from the Retail Association that it could impact counties that have a bag fee. If your county does not have a bag fee ordinance, this bill is not for you. It's only for those counties that have imposed this ordinance. I do want to make mention also to Sierra Club, their letter, and I will admit I love Sierra Club. They are great supporters of mine. And so I just wanted to clarify, because no one has come to talk to me about the bill. So I wanted to clarify in case they were not sure what it actually does. The first and second paragraph, I couldn't agree more, that the charge for paper bag creates an incentive for shoppers to bring their own bag instead of switching to a single use, instead of paying for paper bags. Nine of the jurisdictions currently set a 10-cent floor on the charge for paper carryout bags. One set a 5-cent floor. I agree with that. These ordinances have been highly effective in increasing reusable bag use and no bag use and minimizing paper bags. I agree with that. Third paragraph, and imposing a cap on the charge for paper bags will reduce the effectiveness of these ordinances over time. Retailers will not be able to capture the cost of the bags they provide. It will prevent jurisdictions skipping down with the bag tax from raising the tax and statute beyond 10 cents. It will prevent the jurisdictions with the bag tax from raising the tax and statute beyond 10 cents. Do your constituency want you to raise it beyond 10 cents? Have you heard that? And it would immediately compel retailers, I'm not going to name the retailers here, but it's in the bill, which currently charge more than 10 cents for paper bags, to charge customers less than the bag costs them. It currently would charge customers more than 10 cents for paper carryout bags and charge customers less than what they would pay. I am protecting the customers, my community who have said to me they don't know what they pay. they shouldn't pay more than 10 cents. I don't know when I'm paying regardless of what store I go to. So in closing, speaking of retailers, the cost of eggs, food, and other items keeps increasing. Why should a consumer constantly have to eat, pun intended, that cost? It needs to be a consistent cost across the board. And it does not touch the policy, again, regarding reusable bags. So I want to make mention to that. If you have a reusable bag, it does not touch that because some are cloth, some are some are a little thicker than others. So I would agree that cost may be different depending on what type of bag you have. It does not change the fact, that individuals can bring their own bags. It just simply states that the consumer should have a consistent and fair cost for paying their bags regardless of the store they go to. Colleagues, I urge a favorable report on HB 947, and thank you for allowing me to go over this bill.
Thank you, Delegate Tolles. Delegate Foley has a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Delegate. So do you know, I was reading the Sierra Club letter as you were talking about it. Mm-hmm. And it seems to me that this might be the problem, and I want to know what you know about this. So in my county, for example, and I believe also in Howard County, plastic bags are 5 cents. Good. It may be also paper bags are 5 cents. But is there a limit? I mean, is there a similar language allowing for a ceiling of 10 cents on plastic bags?
Well, I can speak to my county. We banned plastic bags altogether, so we only allow paper bags, and that is the problem, Delegate Foley, and I can go to a Safeway. I don't want to use any names because I'm just kind of, using hypotheticals, but I can go to like a Safeway and they may charge 10 cents. I can go to another store, they charge 25 cents within my same county. So that is.
Right. I understand the problem you're trying to address, but my point is that do you think, and I think this is where Sierra Club is getting, although I don't really want to speak for them, but reading their letter, do you think that this will, in counties like Howard and Montgomery, where bags, you pay for the bags, period, whether that will drive people to plastic bags rather than the more expensive paper bags if they can charge 10 cents for paper bags? Because my feeling is that the retailers might rather give plastic bags, but we try to discourage those for various reasons.
Well, you all should just ban plastic bags altogether.
Well, yeah, but we didn't. And so that's my question, though. There's no other limit on plastic bags, like there is upper limit like this for 10 cents, right?
So I'm not sure I understand your question, but I think Sierra Club, as they indicated, I don't think they like plastic bags. So
no, they don't.
Yeah, so I think that if you ban plastic, look, the bottom line is what this bill does, first of all, it's up to the county, right? Howard County has something different. Prince George's has something different. And so if your county work through the ordinance and say, hey, we want to charge this 5 cents, they can do that because that's less than 10 cents. That's all it says. It will still follow the same law your county has. In terms of plastic bags altogether, again, with Montgomery County say, hey, I want to ban plastic bags like we do in Prince George's, that's fine. I'm just asking that you be consistent across the board of what you charge. Someone should not have to pay 25 cents or 50 cents for, and I should add, if it's okay, Madam Chair, that I think that this could impact minorities, communities. Every one of us in our county have areas that may be struggling a little bit more than others. And so you want to make sure it's equitable as well. If I don't go to one part of the county and they charge 10 cents and another part of the county charge 25 cents or 50 cents, you are impacting individuals who, could be at a fixed income, some of our seniors, some of our other vulnerable communities, lower income communities. And I think that would also address that issue, which I have found as well. Depending on where I go in the county, I could pay 25, 50 cents, whereas a big retailer may keep it at 10 cents. And I think that's what we want to address as well. So thank you for your question.
Thank you, Delegate Foley. And just to clarify, in places like, for instance, Baltimore City, they have banned plastic, but they've banned it up to a certain mill. So you could potentially get a plastic bag, but it has to be at 4 or 5 mils. Delegate Morgan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Delegate, interesting bill. So I'm going to go way out on a limb.
Okay. I'm from judiciary, so we like hypotheticals.
You guys have a lot of issues down there. I got that part too.
Yeah.
Paper bags from the environmental point of view are biodegradable, I believe. And you understand where you're coming from on various people charging various prices. The plastic bags are not biodegradable and probably things that, are end up in landfills and streets and in trees and things like that. What if we banned bags altogether and forced individuals to bring their bag with them over a period of time? It's going to be a training process, like Pavlov's dog. Once you get there, they'll learn it. But eventually, then maybe we wouldn't have to worry about paper bags. We wouldn't have to worry about the plastic bags in landfills and things like that, and then just force the hand of the consumer.
I can't speak to that, whether this is environmental transportation, so I'm not going to tell you all what to do about environmental issues, but I want to go down that path. But I will say that ideally it changes the behavior. For example, I was recently in Utah, and these stores are right next to each other. One store, they don't charge for a bag. They gave me a bag for my item. It was a clothing item. Next store I went to next door says, if you want a bag, it's $1. I said, that's okay. I'll put it in this bag. I don't need another bag anyway. I'm traveling. And so my point is that it changes the behavior, because if I'm in Prince George's and I know that they charge 10 cents, I keep my bags in the car. So if I go to Washington, D.C., which is on the border of me, or if I go to, Montgomery County, I have my bags in my car. I don't need to pay because I've changed my behavior where I've kept the bag in the car. And I leave that up to local government. And this bill, and speaking on this bill, it does not change local government ability to say, hey, we want to ban bags altogether. But I'm not asking the state to do that. I'm just asking the state to ask jurisdictions to be. If you have this law in place in your county, let's just be consistent, because it's not equitable to decide and we're going to be 25 cents from the store next door. The other store around the corner is 10 cents. And we need to keep it consistent. And so I think if another county said we charge 25 cents, I would have kept it at 25 cents. In doing my research, no county charges more than 10 cents that have a bag fee ordinance. So
thanks.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Moore. And are there any other questions for Delegate Tolles?
And Madam Chair, I see colleagues from ECM, and I don't know if they
don't have questions. They would have told me.
Oh,
I gave them specific instruction.
Yes, we know. Yes, ma'am, seatmate.
So seeing no more questions, we'll go to the two unfavorable witnesses. We have Carrington Anderson, Maryland Association of Counties, and Sarah Price from the Maryland Retailers Association.
What's your rules here? Okay. I'll stay back here. Okay. Thank you. Okay.
Good afternoon, Madam Vice Chair, honorable committee members. Sarah Price here on behalf of the Maryland Retailers Alliance. I did reach out to the sponsor on this bill to try to get some clarification about what her goals were, and I appreciate the conversation that she had with me, but we do continue to have some concerns. Businesses charge for bags because bags cost money. Plastic bags cost a penny, maybe two max. Paper bags cost even large grocers an average of 10 cents. So when the Retailers Alliance has come out in support of local bag policies that propose a ban and fee structure of 10 cents that the retailer keeps, we do that because businesses are being mandated to transition to a more expensive material, and they have to pay for that. If the customer isn't paying for the bag, then it's coming from somewhere. It's going to be in your overhead price otherwise. We have concerns that this bill, as drafted, could be interpreted to cap retailers from independently choosing to set whatever price is appropriate to offset what they are paying for the bags. We are supportive of the goals to try to reduce single-use bags. Like I've been working with the Sierra Club collaboratively since I think 2022. I know bags were the first thing that I worked on with the Retail Alliance when I joined the team in 2019. This is an ongoing issue. We have seen the cost of bags increase over that time, and we just want businesses to be able to be made whole on the product that they are being told that they have to carry. So we would urge an unfavorable report and allow the businesses to set that. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Carrington Anderson with the Maryland Association of Counties, speaking in respectful opposition to House Bill 947. First, I would like to add that some counties do retain some of that fee from the bag. It looks different per jurisdiction. This bill does preempt local government's authority by limiting the fee that counties or jurisdictions impose on these bags. It limits local decision-making, and counties believe that we are the best position to make these decisions, and we would respectfully urge an unfavorable report.
Thank you so much. I have a quick question. Do you know what the average cost of a paper bag is for a retailer?
It depends on the type of bag. So for
and type of store?
Yes. So a grocery store, for a basic paper grocery bag with no handles and no branding, that can cost about 10 cents. Okay. If you have very, very large buying power and are buying in a multi-state fashion, you might be able to bring that down a little bit, but on the whole, it's a floor of about 10 cents. If you are a Main Street boutique retailer, you're probably paying over $1 for a bag that has branding, that has a reinforced handle, that is able to carry multiple clothing items perhaps, but it varies based on the bag and your buying power.
Thank you. Delegate Healy.
Yeah, I had a question for the retailers too. When you have, I'd like you to address what the sponsor of the amendment said regarding how even the same chain would be charging different things in the same county just because they can, and having an inconsistency across the board where consumers don't know what they're going to be charged. They think, I went to this store down the block last week and now I'm next to my work and I'm going to the same store and it costs more. How do you deal with that?
So I'm not aware of any chains that are charging a different amount in different locations within the same county or the same state, frankly. Especially in the grocery industry, things are extremely competitive. So on the most part, it's unlikely that a business is going to be charging much more than their neighbors or than the other locations unless they have hit a point where they financially absolutely have to. So I'm not aware of that.
I guess let me just probe a little bit further, Madam Chair. It could be in a large county where there's a very diverse population that there are areas where there are high-end shopping centers and there are like little neighborhood strip malls, and they might have the exact same chain store in both. Mm-hmm. But the atmosphere around one or the other, they might do that. They might charge more for everything in the other store where they have an ambiance, they might have higher rent, all that, but why should it be tagged to this is the question I have.
I don't feel that it's appropriate to tell. Okay, bags are essentially a piece of merchandise. Up until this point, when you've received a plastic bag at a business, it's a courtesy to be given it. You know, we all expect it to come for free, but it is the business's decision to offer it for free as a courtesy. When we are telling businesses that they have to use a more expensive material, I don't know why we also feel it's appropriate to tell them how much they can charge for it. The same carton of eggs may cost a different amount from store to store, but we're not mandating how much that has to cost. I understand the concern here, and I do feel that consistency is good for customers. We do want to know how much we're going to pay for things, but ultimately, I don't know why we're singling out bags as opposed to any other product.
Thank you.
Thank you. I forgot to mention, we are joined by the Economic Matters Committee, Delegate Ampry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Price, I'm trying to understand some of the reasoning and logic here on how we got to the point where we're now paying for bags, and your conversation around where the cost comes from and associated with the cost of merchandise. So you're saying that previously bags were a courtesy. Now that we charge for them in response to trying to shift people to using reusable bags, I'm trying to understand, you said that previously it was a courtesy and the bags were free because it was caught up in the price you paid for it in some form or fashion. So now consumers are not paying for it?
They are, but at this point, if the goal is to encourage people to bring their own bags, ultimately we do want a reduction in bags. And I think the way that I'm talking about it is tied up in the fact that businesses are being told, you can't use the cheap bags anymore. You have to pay, if you want to give out bags to customers, you have to pay, 5, 6 times more for the material.
I'm going to go off my experience. I've been shopping in grocery stores in Maryland since I was a child. Trying to understand, I was always given the option in every grocery store I've been to, whether it's in Baltimore City or Prince George's when I was in college, it was paper or plastic. So paper's always been available. So I'm trying to understand your logic around the burden it puts on you, because the cost, I don't understand how you're getting to the point where now you're paying for it when you were paying for it before.
Well, it's always been available, but it's not, paper, at least in the last several decades, has not been what the majority of customers are choosing to take. And so now that businesses have to be prepared to stock exclusively paper bags and a higher number of them potentially than they did in the past, that is an overhead cost, and it's increasing.
Yeah, I guess, and okay, so, okay, I'm still trying to connect the dots here on the cost of bags. But I think it's more conversation we can have offline in regards to some of those pieces. But thank you for your answer.
Thank you so much. Delegate Davis.
Yes. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to follow up to one of the response you just gave the good delegate. Who is requiring that you give better bags?
Every local government that bans plastic, respectfully. So the paper bags, they simply cost more for the businesses to stock. And so when plastic is no longer an option based on local ordinance, you have to stock paper or tell customers there are no more single-use bags, bring your own or carry your bananas.
So the requirement is paper bags that average about 10 cents?
Yes.
Okay, good. And you do understand that this law was not passed to be a profit maker for retailers?
Absolutely. Okay. And no one is attempting to make a profit off of them. We just want to pay for the bags.
I'm one who believes that there needs to be some consistency, all right? From store to store, there just needs to be some consistency. So if it's not 10 cents, where would you land? 50 cents, 40 cents?
I'm not aware of anyone who is charging that much for paper bags or is attempting to.
So you don't have a problem with 10 cents?
I'm saying paper bags cost 10 cents right now. When I started working on this issue in Baltimore City in 2019, paper bags cost grocery stores 6 to 8 cents. So we are seeing the costs continue to increase. This is based on production cost, it's based on shipping costs, it's based on the fact that other jurisdictions across the state and country are also phasing out plastic, so there's a higher demand. So for a variety of reasons, the cost is going up, and I can't promise right now that it's gonna cap out at 10 cents for the businesses.
I got it. We're smart, we're legislators. We could add a penny every year and still be way lower than $1 or 40 cents.
Yes.
Isn't that correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Davis. Delegate Long?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you so much for being here today. Question 1, do you believe in price gouging?
No.
Okay. 2, why should consumers have to pay more? Because a bag is not eggs. Can you explain that to me?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Why should the consumer have to pay more? Because a bag is not like the eggs that we're having to go to in the store, and that's in demand and inflation.
Pay more than what? Exactly. I just want to make sure I'm answering, that I understand your question.
Why should a consumer have to pay more than perhaps what the business even had to put out to purchase the bag?
Businesses need to break even to stay afloat. Again, I am not aware of grocery stores primarily that are charging more than what it costs them to use the bags. But frankly, we are operating under a capitalist system, and businesses have bills to pay, and they need to make the money that it costs to pay the bills and stay open. I mean, I don't believe that anyone should have to pay an exorbitant amount for any product, but if customers expect to pay the exact cost of every item that is available to them in the store, then the business can't pay the employees and they can't keep the lights on. So everything comes at a cost.
Madam Chair, my last question, thank you. So, for example, if I'm in a municipality and it gets to the point now where McDonald's, which has happened, McDonald's charges me 15 cents, 18 cents, 20 cents for a bag.
Okay.
To put my food in. Do you feel I should keep paying more and more and more for the bag that my food has to go in, or should I just have no bag for the food? What are your thoughts on that?
I have gone on the record in local jurisdictions in support of exemptions for situations in which customers do not have a choice about getting a bag. Generally, carry-out food and drive-thrus have fallen into those circumstances. That's, in my opinion, that's ultimately what a lot of these bag fees are about, is that the goal here is to encourage customers to bring their own bags. That is why the ban and fee structure is in place. That's why it is most effective. It's why entities like the Sierra Club are supportive of it, because it's an incentive for a customer to bring their own bag.
Thank you.
And in retail, that is a circumstance in which you have the choice, whereas at a drive-through window, they are not going to just hand you your fries barehanded.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'll just close with this. I think that it's concerning to me. I don't think it takes an enormous amount of fees to help alter and change and deter behavior. I think that you can do that with 10 cents. So thank you. Isn't that so?
Okay. From Economic Matters, we have Delegate Boafo.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and it's good to be back in ENT. Ms. Price, good to see you. I feel like we do this bar all the time in our committee, but it's good to be doing this here. I wasn't going to say anything until you mentioned that you don't believe in price gouging, which I found a little concerning there. So what is enough for a consumer, right? If a consumer walks into a store and is paying $3 for a bag, do you think that's acceptable?
If the bag costs the business $3.
Okay. And do you believe that there's any bad actors in the retail market?
I think it's possible that there are bad actors in any industry. I am not here to advocate for a business to charge 50 cents for a paper bag. I am here to state that the reason that we have been supportive of the bag fees is because paper costs more money and we want the business to be able to break even on that mandated transition.
Do you believe on other products sold in the store that the business is making a profit in some way, shape, or form?
Generally, yes.
What's the profit margin for like a local grocery store?
So the average profit margin for grocery stores is 1% to 3%. I believe the Food Industry Association reported it out at 1.6% for 2023.
So 1% to 3%, just
in total profit.
In total profit. And you think that adding another 50 cents or $1 or $2 on a bag is going to increase that profit margin for the business?
No one is trying to use bags to increase profit margins. We just want to pay for the bags.
Got it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much. Delegate Guyton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And, thank you for bringing the bill. I understand it's a fierce discussion that I am really surprised by. And with respect to all my colleagues, I feel like we've kind of gotten down this dark rabbit hole in this conversation that got a little bit away from the bill. I'm remembering when our local ordinance passed the local ordinance, for the ban on plastic bags requiring, I think, 5 cents for our paper bags. And I am looking online and I do see that the bags are actually costing, because I'm looking bulk grocery bags costing more than that already for our retailers. And I feel like, and if I'm wrong, let me know, I feel like the counties that put this into place, can they not also do what we're trying to do here today and limit the amount that a retailer can charge for a bag if they want to? If they can say you can't charge less than this, which is what they all do, can't they also say you can't charge more than this?
They could.
So to me, it seems confusing that this is here rather than in the local areas that are passing these ordinances. Thank you. I guess my question is, did we pass? Well, we haven't passed, but did the counties pass, and many of us support this sort of legislation to try to discourage people from buying the bags no matter what price they were?
I believe that is the goal generally. The primary goal that I've heard in every jurisdiction is a reduction in litter and a reduction, as much of a reduction as is possible to achieve in the use of single-use bags.
And do you believe that if a bag, and I have not seen it, but I believe my colleagues who say they're being charged or tried to be charged $1 or $3 for a bag, I believe maybe that's happening. I wouldn't pay it, so I suppose it's a choice if somebody wants to do that. Do you believe that if a grocery store were charging $3 a bag, that perhaps people would be more likely to bring their own bags and not have to pay for that? Because
it would likely be an effective deterrent.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm just confused by the bill. I'm sorry.
Delegate Ziegler.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think maybe we're mixing up two completely separate things. One is a store has a whole lot of costs that a customer might not actually see that are either necessary or are part of a store's effort to make shopping there a pleasant experience and to get you to come in. Maybe they have fresh flowers that they keep in a boutique or who knows. So the bag thing is a policy decision that counties and the state are taking to reduce plastic and paper use. So I don't think we can consider it a cost in the same way that you would, it is unlike eggs in that sense. A store is welcome to charge double what the store next door charges for eggs if they have a marvelous shopping experience that they think will get people in. But the bag thing is an attempt to change behavior. And therefore, I think we have to think about it differently. Or let me say, should we perhaps be thinking about it differently? Thank you, Madam Chair.
I don't disagree. I just would reiterate that the reason that we are supportive of not capping the fee is because the bags do, paper costs money. Cost more money than plastic. And so we want retailers to have the availability to set a fee that is appropriate to cover their costs of providing that material.
Thank you. Delegate Long is the last question.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for this last bite of the apple. I just want to clarify to help alleviate some of my colleagues' confusion, so I'm sure she'll watch this replay. But question, so is it not so that the state in many circumstances, many different varying circumstances, has established mandates or guardrails on what a local jurisdiction can or cannot do in certain instances? So with that argument that this is not a bill that we should be dealing with, that the local jurisdictions can handle the matter, do you think that that would be then now null and void in that case? Does that make sense?
I am not sure I understand the question. I'm sorry.
Okay, so the state often, in any particular subject matter, can put guardrails up on what a local jurisdiction can or cannot do, on what a municipality can or cannot do. The question was lifted and raised, well, since this is an issue that can be handled at the local jurisdictional level in a county or municipality. If that is the case, and we've set guardrails in other areas, do you still think that is a plausible argument?
Go for it.
Thank you, Delegate. I guess from the county's perspective, it's always up to this body what you all pass. From our perspective, if it is a local issue, we would want to keep that flexibility and retain the ability to make these decisions locally. But this body gets to make ultimately that decision.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much, and thank you all so much for the questions. That concludes the bill hearing for HB 9, for now HB 1067, Delegate Conway, and Government fee for plastic and paper bearing. Prohibition on charge.
Thank you, Chair and members of the committee. I'm Delegate Conway here to present House Bill 1067. 1067 is very simple. What I'm asking is that people who purchase their groceries and they use a SNAP or WIC, that they would be exempt from paying a bag fee. I've been dealing with this paper bag issue since November of last year, and I have an Attorney General's opinion about the extra charge, and the Attorney General says, yes, you can charge a additional surcharge, but you're supposed to have it itemized on your receipt, invoice, or your other document. I had a collection of receipts in my office pocket, and now I'm going to have to send you a copy of it. One of the receipts says it's 20 cents for a bag, and I went back to the same store, and I showed them my badge, and I said, well, I need to check on the state's money, and they gave me a receipt, and they said, really, you really need a receipt? I said, yes. So they gave me a receipt, and the receipt said the bag fee was 20 cents, and the state tax was 1 cent. So then in addition to that, back on this bill, I went to the market, and I followed a family in of about 6 children and a lady, and they purchased all kinds of things, and they had a stroller, and I was looking for the baby in the stroller, and there was no baby in the stroller, and they put the groceries in the stroller, and some of the children were carrying the groceries, and they were walking down the street, and I felt awful, so I wanted to get the experience myself, and I had previously used the bags, reusable bags, and one time I didn't know that chicken juice had leaked into the bag, and I didn't know where the awful smell was coming from. It's very unsanitary. So I bought a rotisserie chicken, and I tried to walk from in the store to outside to my car with the rotisserie chicken, and grease was sloshing everywhere, and I was like, this is just ridiculous, and I felt terrible, and I thought that the people who get SNAP and WIC, they shouldn't be charged for these bags. And so that's why I put this bill in, and I'll be glad to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Delegate. Are any questions before we go to the online favorable witness? Okay. Call up now favorable witness Gabrielle Sanchez, Clean Water Action.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. You can begin.
Okay, great. Good afternoon. My name is Gabrielle Sanchez, and I am with Clean Water Action. And I'm here today to voice our strong support for HB 1067. Environmental equity is crucial, and this bill sets an important precedent for other states with plastic bag bans. Without these exemptions, bag fees do unfairly burden low-income customers, leading to inequitable outcomes. We've already seen the negative impacts of bag bans without exemptions in several Maryland municipalities. And while some do argue that distributing reusable bags is a solution, the reality is that it's not enough. As of 2024, Maryland has nearly 700,000 SNAP participants and more than 120,000 WIC recipients. So providing even 3 reusable bags per person could cost into the millions based on the wholesale cost of reusable bags. And that doesn't even account for wear and tear over time. Access is another issue. So where do these bags, these reusable bags, where do they be distributed? How would eligibility be determined? Many SNAP and WIC participants do lack reliable transportation, making it difficult for them to obtain free reusable bags. And if they do receive them, people do forget bags. It happens all the time. It's a minor inconvenience for some, but it can be a humiliating burden for others. And I know this firsthand. As a former WIC recipient, I can tell you that having to carry groceries by hand because I couldn't afford a bag would be both demeaning and really stressful. And so while wealthier shoppers can simply pay the fee, many low-income families don't have that opportunity. And there's also opponents of the bill that claim SNAP and WIC users would have to self-identify, but that is not the case because grocery store checkout systems already distinguish which items qualify for benefits when they use their EBT card. So it would eliminate that need for disclosure. So ultimately, HB 1067 is about upholding equity. It ensures that the paper bag fee serves as an environmental incentive and not an undue punishment on low-income families. So we
Thank
urge
you
you to vote
so
favorable.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Is there a question for Delegate Buafo from Economic Matters?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Delegate Conway, for the bill. I truly do like it, and I think, obviously, we want to do everything we can to help those who are in our communities, respectively. I just have a clarification question, because I'm pretty sure it's federal regulation that we treat every grocer the same, right? So when you walk up, you don't know if someone is using SNAP benefits until the very end of the transaction. So just from a process standpoint, how will that work in the grocery stores?
They just ask you, would you like paper or plastic? And once you approve that they don't have to pay for it, you say yes, and I'm using my WIC card or I'm using my SNAP card. I don't think that anybody should be ashamed right now to be poor or to state which means they're going to pay by. So it's not really a problem. You just say, I'm using my WIC card, and can I have some bags? Please.
Okay, I'll talk to you offline about it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So no further questions. We will go to our unfavorable witness, Sarah Price from Maryland Retailers Alliance.
Hello again. Sarah Price on behalf of the Maryland Retailers Alliance. I do want to note that our opposition to this proposal is not on the merits of the proposal. It is based on the potential administrative burdens that could be imposed by putting this requirement in place. It is true that cashiers are not allowed to ask if you are paying with benefits. That is federal law. We have to treat everybody equally, and we don't want any customers to have to self-identify. This particular issue has come up in a majority of the jurisdictions that have passed local carryout bag laws. Montgomery County is the first and only to have passed anything with this exemption in place, and that law passed last month, and it does not go into effect until next year. So I don't know yet what the overall impact is going to be on retailers. But having walked through this process with retailers in preparation for the conversations in other jurisdictions, my understanding is that every business uses a different point of sale system, and they are not all set up to be able to identify the type of payment that is being used on a card reader, or to indicate that to the cashier until the transaction is complete. Walking through the situation of somebody exclusively buying groceries and using SNAP, so every single item on the belt is covered by the benefit. When they would use the EBT card, the system would then prompt that, hey, additional payment is needed, ostensibly for the bags, but the way the system is coded, it is not going to pop up and say that the bags individually still need to be paid for. It's only going to say that there is a remaining balance. I'm sure there are some systems that are capable of doing this, but I cannot assume that every single retailer is prepared to do so. So that is the basis for our opposition. Thank you.
Seeing no further questions, thank you so much, Ms. Price. That ends the bill hearing for HB 1067. Calling now Delegate Austin for HB 1412, Business Regulation, Retail Stores, Carryout Bags. Did we do Let's call Delegate Howard since he's here, 1269.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In the interest of time, may I call my bill?
You sure can. School bus transition, propane-powered school buses, grant program, fund, and purchase.
Madam Chair, thank you, colleagues. Good to see you. For the record, Delegate Howard, pleased to present HB 1269, asking for a favorable report. This bill expands the zero-emission school bus transition grant program by incorporating propane-powered school buses within the existing provisions governing zero-emission school bus vehicles. Additionally, beginning in fiscal 2030, the bill authorizes a local board of education to enter into a new contract for the purchase of school buses that are propane-powered. And we also have some technical changes in the bill. The genesis of the bill is, as we move forward in trying to reduce our carbon footprint and reach the goals as outlined by the legislature, we're going to, hopefully we're going to transition over into a cleaner school bus fleet. And this is one of the vehicles that we definitely should do it. And here to talk about some of the technical aspects of the bill is Randy Jubb. He's one of the largest owners of the propane fleet in Anne Arundel County. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Randy.
Thank you, Delegate. Vice Chair Boyce, members of the committee, thank you for letting me speak. I am the owner of Jubb's Bus Service Incorporated in Glen Burnie, Maryland. We have a fleet of approximately 95 school buses. Out of that, 34 of those buses are propane. So it's about 40% of our fleet. I'm going to speak about the ease of transition from our diesel buses to our propane buses in regard to what stands in our way for electric. Because of what that the fuel, how you fuel these buses and how the range that these buses can go, they can just fit right in with a school bus, a diesel school bus. So we have no issue with that transformation when we did that, and it was not cost prohibitive. The companies that provide a propane have provided us with the tanks and the fueling facilities for them. There was minimal cost, and we were able to get that done relatively quickly and move forward with each year replacing our diesels with some propane. We have in Anne Arundel had applied for some grants for electric because we weren't going to be opposed to some of that. You know, if it was coming, we wanted to get prepared. But we have run into roadblocks for some of our grants by our county administrator at the county not signing off on that for me to have even seek a grant for electric school buses. So I'm not one that's, you know, I'm trying to move forward with stuff that makes sense. I think it's interesting that we have that many propane, and there's another gentleman that will be providing statistics, that many propane operating, and yet we can't do any zero. So we are doing something, and I think propane's great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Delegate, your virtual witness is not here, so I do apologize. So I want to open it up for questions if there are questions for Delegate Howard.
May I address the unfavorable from MEA?
You sure can.
So I appreciate former Senator Pinsky's opinion on the matter, but at the end of the day, we are moving forward vigorously in the legislature. As you know, the RPS is being looked at. For those folks at home, that's our shopping cart of the way we produce energy and how we produce energy in the state. And that is now including language like nuclear, which he was, of course, not a proponent before, and is now. And I am a little mystified as the unfavorable position from the former senator from MEA, as this will be one of the best and most strategic and cost-effective methods to help us attain those goals.
Sorry about that. Any additional questions? Okay. Okay, that concludes Bill here on House Bill 1269. We can turn to House Bill 1467, Delegate Howard, Local Finance, Special Taxing Districts, Erosion Prevention Projects, and Erosion Control Projects.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good to see you. Thank you for having me. I also have a panel here as well. Good to see you. Thank you for coming. Thank you for coming. Again, colleagues, Delegate Seth Howard, pleased to bring before you HB 1467. This bill establishes, so this is a special taxing district for shoreline erosion control districts. It's a pretty technical bill. Essentially, there's about 20 of these shoreline erosion control districts in Anne Arundel County, and this bill seeks to streamline the process for them to access funds for new construction shoreline projects as well as existing construction shoreline projects. And quite frankly, I'm going to leave it at that, and I'm going to introduce everyone to Pam Foster. I please suggest you ask questions. She has really led the charge in my area in South County on some erosion control projects. And she is an absolute subject matter expert when it comes to this. So I was really, really happy to have her here today and have her bring this extremely critical bill to my attention.
I am Pam Foster, here to support HB 1467 on behalf of Cedarhurst on the Bay. In January 2024, Cedarhurst requested to use $56,000 of its accumulated shoreline erosion control district funds to pay for the final design, cost estimate, and permitting to rebuild the community's failing shoreline. The Anne Arundel County Office of Law made the determination that the restoration of Cedarhurst's half-mile of existing hardened shoreline is a new project, which would require the completion of a challenging petition process. A memo from a deputy county attorney included a statement which is not supported by Maryland Code, saying that in order to qualify as repair of an existing shoreline erosion control project, our project would have to have been previously paid for with SECD funds. I explained to Delegate Howard how this vague Maryland code had allowed for this illogical interpretation. Our review of the code also revealed that SECD funds are to be paid interest. A county accountant confirmed that county-held SECD funds were not in an interest-bearing account. The deputy county attorney responded to our inquiry about the interest, saying that the county will calculate 3 years of interest on SECD funds and credit that amount to our community, an apparent admission that the interest had been mishandled. She went on to say that the county has not changed its position, that the repair of our existing shoreline is a new project and a petition is still required. More than a year after our initial request, Cedarhurst has hired a lawyer to negotiate with the county for access to our more than $200,000 of accumulated SECD funds. What happened to Cedarhurst is wrong, and I urge you to amend the Maryland Code regarding SECDs to ensure it doesn't happen to other communities. Thank you.
If I may, Mr. Chair.
Of course.
Just as an aside, the Anne Arundel County delegation amended this bill to be an emergency bill, and we also unanimously voted for the bill in committee, or I'm sorry, in delegation.
Great. Thank you, Delegate Howard. Any questions on the bill? Delegate Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm really curious on this. On what waterway is this property or properties?
Cedarhurst is on the direct Chesapeake Bay.
It's on the bay.
Yes.
Is the project currently hardened?
Yes, we have a half-mile of hardened shoreline. It is a bulkhead that was first, it's numerous bulkheads. The first one placed in 1930. And over time, more bulkheads, rock, and then larger rock on top. It is failing now.
Where's MDE on this?
I have spoken to, I haven't spoken to MDE. I had the Maryland Department DNR out, yes, and they would like for us to to rebuild our shoreline as a living shoreline.
That's getting to my point. They would like you to make it a living shoreline.
Yes, that was our proposal to, they know, okay. A hardened revetment is no longer the best practice.
I understand this really
Yes.
well.
So,
But so you would like to have it just hardened?
no, we would, in order to repair our shoreline, we would like to rebuild it into a living shoreline, because that is the best practice at this time.
So you want to put a living shoreline in? I heard that.
Yes, I would.
And who's going to pay for the living shoreline for a half mile?
So we had hoped that we would be a shovel-ready project by now, and then we were going to go after grants.
Good luck.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I understand that.
Delegate Long.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Delegate, pardon this question if it may seem off the wall, just curious. I know you border districts. Does this affect the bay on the side here, Calvert, or?
No, this is a local, this is Anne Arundel County.
Okay, but I know we border our districts. Are there any impacts that may come down that way?
None that I can foresee, I mean, because it is a local bill.
Okay, thank you.
It might actually make it easy. I'm sure you probably do have an SECD in there that you, quite frankly, aren't aware of, and I certainly wasn't. And that's no fault of our own. But streamlining this process is probably going to make it, quite frankly, easier to for them to put in place best practices and access those funds.
Delegate Morgan, second bite at the apple.
I'm really sorry. This is the first time in a long time I've taken another bite. Approximately how many residents do you have in this community along that half mile?
We have over 400 properties and approximately 385 property owners. I do not know how many residents.
Okay, if this has to be repaired, you can't find the grants and whatever that cost would be, do you believe that the owners are willing to cough up the money to pay for that?
I don't think that that's possible because we are talking about millions of dollars. So I don't think that is possible. I am very realistic about that.
I am too. So in a very realistic sense, if you can't come up with the money and you're going to be required to put a living shoreline in, what happens?
I don't know. So step one would be to get a final design and to go through the permitting process, in which case the state would have their comments.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, any further questions? All right, thank you, Delegate Howard. That concludes the bill here on House Bill 1467. I think we can turn to House Bill 1412. Delegate Alston.
Thank you, colleagues.
Business regulation, retail stores carry out bags. I'll just note we're still joined by colleagues from the Economic Matters Committee. And Delegate Alston, if you have looks like you're on your own, please go ahead.
Thank you, and good afternoon to Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and members of the Environment and Transportation Committee. Today I'm here to present House Bill 1412. This bill will ban the practice of charging people to utilize bags when they go to a grocery store or retail establishment. And I will tell you, this bill really it burns me up that you go to the store, you spend a couple of $100s in groceries, and I just looked it up, Maryland average grocery bill is about $340. And then at the end, you're asked, would you like a bag with that? So you've just spent $340, you have a cart full of groceries, and someone wants to know if you want a bag. You're not at Costco, so maybe you have a lot of little things that you can't carry in your hand. And then depending on where you are in the state, it may be an additional 5 cents per bag, an additional 10 cents per bag. I've heard stories of people being charged upward of 25 cents per bag. So you're gonna pay another couple of bucks, and maybe it doesn't seem like a lot. But imagine you're on a fixed income. Imagine you're a senior citizen, times are tight, things are very difficult financially, and you now have to come up with another couple of bucks just to carry your groceries out of the store into your car or onto public transportation and then into your home. Now imagine if you're really down on your luck and the state is paying for your food. You're getting temporary cash assistance, or you're using WIC, or you're using some other government program to pay for your food, whether it's federally or state funded, and then you're asked, do you want a bag? Well, you can't use the government's money to pay for that bag. So if you don't have it, how are you supposed to pay to get your items safely back into your home? It's an embarrassment to people who are struggling if they can't afford it. And what is most egregious, when I was doing the research for this bill, I found out that in many of our jurisdictions, the money's not going to local governments. It's not going to any environmental purpose. It's actually staying with the businesses who are already making enough profit. So we're subsidizing businesses, cost of doing businesses. This is their cost of doing business. You need bags. And we're now telling businesses how much you can charge for it. We're telling them different things depending on which city or county you're in this state. The prices are all over the map. And we're letting them keep it. And I just think that in our state, we can do better for our citizens. So what this bill does is it says local jurisdictions can no longer charge this fee. It says that if your jurisdiction currently charges this fee, and it's going to an environmental purpose, because that's what we were sold when these fees first came about, is that they were going to be used to clean up all of these plastic bags. If it's currently going to an environmental purpose, fine, you can keep charging the fee. We will grandfather those in. But if that fee is staying with the business, then we need to stop that practice. It also says that if you are poor and you are using government assistance, our tax dollars, to pay for your food, we should not be charging you for the bag that you need in order to get your food from the store to whatever transportation mode you're using and then into your house. That is a common sense solution that can help all of our constituents during these difficult times that we're all facing. Finally, this bill will provide consistency throughout the state. We should not have different regulations if you're in Charles County or Montgomery County or Anne Arundel County or on the shore. It runs the map. Right now, and you can look at it in the fiscal note, there are 10 different cities that charge a bag fee of some sort. 10 different regulations on that just amongst the cities. And then there are 6 different counties. So if you're in a county and your county charges a fee, and then you're in a city within that county, I don't know that there's anything in our state law that will prohibit you being charged twice for the same bag. I think by practice, they may be not doing it, but there's no prohibition against it. There are too many different laws on the book. We need consistency, we need uniformity, and more importantly, we need to stop this practice of allowing businesses to profit. I'm all for keeping things that are going to environmental purposes. That's why we've grandfathered it in. But I think it's almost hypocrisy that we're charging these fees, and some of the reusable bags that people are using are made out of the same plastic that we want them to stop using. So to me, it's a common sense bill. I think my grandmother used to say, penny wise, dollar smart. Let's help people keep some of their pennies so they can use them on more important things than paying for a bag that a business has already factored in to their cost of doing business and their profit margins. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm happy to answer any questions. I would urge a favorable report on this bill, and at a minimum, a favorable report on making sure poor people and our senior citizens no longer have to pay for this fee.
Question from Delegate Foley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Delegate, would this bill have any effect on jurisdictions? And we heard earlier about Prince George's County in another bill testimony. Would this legislation have any effect on jurisdictions that ban, for example, plastic bags? Does it address that, if there's just an outright ban?
No, jurisdictions that have currently banned the use of single-use plastic bags, their ban would stay in effect. What this bill would do is say, now you cannot charge someone to use whatever alternative bag you're using. So you've banned plastic bags, you're using paper or cloth, that's fine, you just can't charge the consumer for it.
Okay, even cloth bags, even those like spiffy cloth bags, you wouldn't?
Whatever the retailer decides they want to use in place of the plastic bag, I think that's their business decision. All this is saying is that you can't pass that cost on to the consumer by way of a mandated fee, which some jurisdictions have done.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I do not see any further questions, so we will turn to unfavorable in-person testimony. We have Carrington Anderson from MACO and Sarah Price from the Maryland Retailers Alliance.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Carrington Anderson with the Maryland Association of Counties, speaking in respectful opposition of House Bill 1412. MACO's concerns with this bill and our opposition are similar to the bill that I was up here prior, so I won't repeat all of that. But this bill does preempt local government authority, and it dictates how counties should structure their programs. It's for these reasons that we would request an unfavorable report.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and honorable committee members. Sarah Price here on behalf of the Maryland Retailers Alliance. Apologies if I get repetitive, but for the record, I would first note that your vice chair is very aware that I am ready and waiting to talk about a statewide preemptive bag bill whenever you would like to bring one to the table. On the subject of businesses making profits from bag fees, again, I would note for the committee that businesses, particularly grocery stores, are not charging 10 cents for a paper bag in order to turn a profit. They are charging 10 cents or 11 or 12 because their paper bags cost 10 or 11 or 12 cents to bring into the store to provide to customers. They cost more than plastic. They're being told that they cannot use the plastic anymore. So if you want a single-use bag, that is not something that has been built into their operating costs for the last several decades up until the bag bans went into effect last year. This is not something that can simply be absorbed into the overhead. It is a higher cost, and if customers want the bags, ultimately the goal is to keep customers from using the single-use bags, and that is what the fee is in place for. And then I would also note again that the computer systems are not all capable of identifying customers by their use of benefits during the actual transaction. There is also no way to identify whether a customer is over the age of 65 without asking them directly, and that would become very burdensome to have to address that question to every customer who possibly looks over the age of 50 in order to make sure that we're capturing everybody adequately. It could also lead to some uncomfortable conversations between employees and customers who do not want to have that question asked. So we would urge an unfavorable report. Thank you.
Thank you both very much. I do not see any questions, so we'll turn to unfavorable virtual testimony from Martha Ainsworth, Maryland Sierra Club.
Good afternoon, Chair Corman, Vice Chair Boyce, and committee members. I'm Martha Ainsworth, a chair of the Maryland Sierra Club's Zero Waste Team, speaking in strong opposition to HB 1412 on behalf of the chapter's 70,000 members and supporters. HB 1412 would effectively undo 13 existing local carryout bag laws that reduce plastic bag pollution and single-use waste and incentivize customers to bring their own carryout bag. These local laws were passed in conformance with the express powers of counties and municipalities to pass ordinances to maintain the health and welfare of their residents. Existing laws in Baltimore City, Howard County, and Montgomery County levy taxes on single-use carryout bags. The revenue is not used exclusively for environmental purposes and is shared with retailers. The other 10 jurisdictions, including 3 counties, ban single-use carryout bags, and they require stores to charge and retain a minimum of 5 to 10 cents for paper bags. The revenue is used by the retailers to pay for the paper bags. None of these existing laws exempt categories of shoppers from behavior change. They provided low-income shoppers with reusable bags and information about what to expect at the checkout. The Sierra Club's pre- and post surveys of shopper behavior in these jurisdictions have found that bring your own bag bills are highly effective in achieving their objectives. The restrictions imposed by HB 1412 would put huge burdens on local governments, most of which do not have the authority to levy a tax on carryout bags without the General Assembly's approval. The broad exemptions for shoppers may be costly to implement and weaken the environmental impact. Montgomery County's Bring Your Own Bag ordinance that was just passed will be launched in 2026 and will waive the paper bag tax for shoppers paying with SNAP or WIC benefits. An evaluation of that law would produce useful lessons for an eventual statewide Bring Your Own Bag bill. But as it stands, HB 1412 would undercut existing local bag bills that have been effective in jurisdictions covering half the population of the state, with no evaluation of the alternative. We request for respect and unfavorable report.
Thank you very much. I do not, we have a question from Delegate Lehman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Ms. Ainsworth. Am I correct in remembering, I think you alluded to this, that if there is a tax, meaning that the local jurisdiction gets to keep the money and spend it for whatever, whether it's environmental or other purposes, that can only be done with every county in the state, I believe, except Montgomery, which has unique taxing authority. That can only be done as enabling legislation. Isn't that correct? Where then the county in question has to take it up and pass it?
Yes, Montgomery County, Baltimore County, and Baltimore City can go ahead, but all the other counties, as I believe you were the sponsor of many bills in Prince George's County to try to get a tax on paper bags for years. So you're correct, yes.
Right. Yes, I worked on this for years. That was my memory. And so the difference is for jurisdictions that where the retailer keeps the fee, it's part of what they call the cost of doing business, and there is no enabling legislation required, correct?
That's correct, and that's actually based on an advisory, as you'll recall, from the Attorney General's office that we received in August of 2022, that this is allowed by counties, that it's not a violation of the law.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. That concludes the bill here on House Bill 1412. We'll go to House Bill 1056. Delegate Conway, local government excise tax on plastic and paper carryout bags. And I'll note we are joined by some colleagues from the Ways and Means Committee.
Thank you, Chair and the members of the committee. I'm Delegate Conway, here to introduce House Bill 1056. I would like to talk to you about the intention of the bill. I'm going to the fiscal and policy note, page 2. Anne Arundel County requires a store to charge 10 cents. Baltimore City requires a 5 cents charge, but the retailers are authorized to keep 4 cents. Baltimore County, a 5 cents fee. Howard County stores are authorized to retain up to 20%, which is 1 penny, and so forth and so on. What I was intending to do was say that I use Baltimore City for my model. So if Baltimore City charged 5 cents and the retailers got 4 cents and the city got 1 cent, anything over that should be taxed. And so what I was saying in my bill drafting request was that the first penny over the 5 cents should go to the state. The second penny should go to the municipality, and the third penny should be retained by the retailers. They had a problem with that, so they said 1/3, 1/3, and 1/3. But of course, you know that's only going to be 99.9%, and then it gets into the movie Brewster's Millions with Richard Pryor, and you have extra money that's left over. So what I was trying to get to was the 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 on 3 cents. Every 3 cents, the first bite comes out for the state, the second bite comes out for the municipality, the third bite comes out for the retailer, so that would be 8 cents, let's say, and so forth all the way on up, because I've paid up to 21 cents for a bag, and only 1 cent for the state is taxed, and I think we're missing out on the tax revenue. I'm trying to help us get this money together. And with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you. I think the only problem is Brewster, I believe, was a fan of the Cubs and not the Orioles.
Uh-oh. Well,
Delegate
thank
Naraki,
you.
did I steal your question?
No, Mr. Chair, you didn't. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, and I ask for a favorable. Have a great day.
Delegate, I've got a question for you. It's good to see you, my friend. I always enjoy our conversations, sir. And I'm sorry to hear about that unfortunate situation with your rotisserie chicken earlier. It sounds like that was pretty painful, that situation. I wanted to ask you, have you had a chance to see the comment that the Howard County Chamber of Commerce has submitted committee testimony to us here on favorable? Basically, they're saying that that this, they have concerns about how it would impact local retailers. They're concerned about the administrative burden. So I just wanted to give you a chance to respond to that, sir.
Well, if you're talking about Howard County, it says the stores are authorized to retain up to 20% of the 5 cents collection, so that's 1%. What I'm basically talking about is people who are charging more than what they're allowed to charge or what's stipulated, like the 5 cents. If somebody's charging 10 cents in Howard County instead of 5, they should pay tax on, the retailer should remit tax to the state on that 5 cents.
Okay. Thank you, Delegate.
Thank you.
Everyone, I apologize. I have bad news. It was actually the Yankees in Brewster's Millions, not the Cubs.
Well, it
so
keeps
I
going
obviously
downhill.
blacked that out for obvious reasons. But thank you, Delegate. We have unfavorable testimony from Sarah Price with the Maryland Retailers Alliance.
Good afternoon. Once more, Sarah Price on behalf of the Maryland Retailers Alliance. Again, apologies for any repetition here, but businesses charge, if a business is charging in excess of the amount that is set in statute for a bag fee, it is likely simply to cover the cost of the bag if the bag costs them more than 10 cents. The fee on bags is not a way for businesses to turn a profit. If any of them do choose to charge a much higher amount, that is an internal business decision, and customers are welcome to shop elsewhere. But ultimately, we would urge an unfavorable report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I do not see any questions. That concludes the bill hearing on House Bill 1056. We will turn to Delegate Heinebaugh, if he's here, House Bill 1277. Department of Natural Resources, Savage River Lodge Hotel Rental Surcharge.
Mr. Chair, members of the Environment and Transportation Committee, thank you for the opportunity to present House Bill 1277 for your consideration this afternoon. For the record, I am Delegate Jim Heinebaugh. I represent District 1A, which includes all of Garrett County and the western part of Allegheny County. Before I talk about the specifics of the bill, I'd like to just give it a little background on this situation. Savage River Lodge is a 42-acre piece of property that's surrounded by 700 acres of the Savage River State Forest in Garrett County. It includes 18 log cabins, 8 yurts, a large lodge and conference center, a log home, and several miles of hiking, biking, cross-country skiing trails. The state purchased the property. I think the Board of Public Works actually approved the purchase in September. And I should add that I publicly supported the state's purchase of the lodge and DNR operating it as a state park after the purchase, which wasn't a very popular position to take back home at the time. Here's the point. The previous owners of the lodge paid property tax, real estate tax. They paid about $60,000 a year in property tax. They also paid Garrett County's 8% accommodations tax. Some people call it a hotel tax. That amounted to about $90,000. That accommodations hotel tax is paid on all short-term rentals in the county. So with the state's purchase of Savage River Lodge, the county lost about $150 a year in revenue. By the way, it's now called the Savage Highlands State Park. So what the bill would do is require DNR to pay the 8% accommodations tax on the cabin and yurt rentals, just like other vacation rental businesses in the county, not any different. That would allow the county to recover some of the lost revenue from the state's purchase of the property. The administrative cost to DNR would be insignificant. They already collect the state sales tax. And while their testimony, I think, says they get to retain none of the money they collect, that's not really true. They get to retain 1.5% of the money they collect if they pay in a timely manner, which they'd be foolish not to. And I recognize that part of the issue here is DNR wants to keep the cost of the lodging down, and I understand that, and because it improves public access to the cabins and yurts for people, like regular people. So I applaud that initiative, and I recognize that by reducing the rental rates, there's going to be less accommodations tax generated. Those cabins used to rent for somewhere between $250 and $300 a night. I think in the fiscal note it says that DNR plans to rent them for about $150 a night. That's a bargain by local standards. The issue, part of the issue here, and I know we've all heard this a lot, is a lot of costs are getting shifted to local government. So the county, just like the state, is looking for sources of revenue. In this case, what they're trying to do is just minimize the loss in revenue. According to the fiscal note, this bill would allow the county to recover about $60,000 a year in the accommodations tax. The bill also would provide a level playing field between the private business sector and vacation rentals and the state. I don't know why, I don't see any reason why the state should have a competitive advantage over the local businesses. I'm confident that the 8% tax will not discourage people from renting those facilities. For example, if they rent the cabins for $150 a night, the 8% tax, if I did the math right, would be $12. I don't think anybody that's renting a vacation building room for the night is going to worry about $12. So in closing, I just respectfully request the committee's favorable consideration of House Bill 1277. Thank you for your attention and consideration, and this concludes my presentation, subject to any questions you might have.
Thank you, Delegate. Any questions on this local tax increase? Delegate Jacobs?
I'm just curious if the county charges a hotel tax, if Garrett County has a hotel tax in place now throughout the county.
Yes, it applies to all. In fact, it's a big source of revenue for the county. The vacation rentals around Deep Creek Lake are the biggest driver. The county generates about $6 million a year in accommodations tax. Okay. Now, in the county code, the law requires that money be spent for promotion of the county for tourism and economic development.
All right, thank you.
Okay, seeing no additional questions, thank you, Delegate. That concludes Bill hearing House Bill 1277. We'll turn to House Bill 1296. Delegate Pruski, Environment Managed Aquifer Recharge Pilot Program Establishment. If you have a panel, bring them up.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'll ask them to come forward. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. I am here today, Delegate Andrew Pruski, to introduce HB 1296, Environment Managed Aquifer Recharge Pilot Program Establishment. So what does this bill do? HB 1296 establishes a Managed Aquifer Recharge Pilot Program and authorizes the Maryland Department of Environment to review, permit, and regulate a process to test the use of treated reclaimed water from a demonstration facility as a source for groundwater augmentation. Additionally, this bill would provide a regulatory path for a county to establish a managed aquifer recharge demonstration facility on a small, localized scale in order to test more long-term strategies for groundwater resiliency and nutrients discharge to the Chesapeake Bay. Groundwater levels in Maryland and our region are slowly declining. This decline in water levels in our aquifers increases the risk of saltwater intrusion and land subsidence. Anne Arundel County has 533 miles of shoreline, so these risks are very concerning not only for Anne Arundel, but also our neighboring counties as well. Just a little bit of background to address the challenges associated with the decline in water levels in our aquifers. Anne Arundel County launched Our Water, which is a vital program which provide long-term benefits by protecting our waterways and the Chesapeake Bay, while also improving our groundwater supplies and water resiliency. One of the 5 core initiatives of this program, Applied Scientific Research Program for the MAR. MAR is a technology to safely treat reclaimed wastewater to drinking water quality to replenish aquifers. This technology also removes PFAS, pharmaceuticals, and personal care products prior to the aquifer recharge. The MAR Managed Aquifer Recharge Pilot Program, which we're proposing, provides the regulatory framework for MDE to permit, review, and regulate a MAR pilot facility. MAR is innovative, integrated, proven, and a long-term sustainable solution to meet water resource challenges that we face today in impacting our local water supplies and the Chesapeake Bay. Although MAR is new to Maryland, it's not new to other places. Similar facilities have been tested and implemented in other states, such as Nevada, New Mexico, California, Florida, and even our neighboring state in Virginia. Anne Arundel County has been operating an MAR testing facility informed by an independent scientific advisory panel for several years. I do have experts today that can answer the technical questions, provide more details, but I asked, based upon the consideration, that you ask for a favorable report for HB 1296. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Karen Henry, and I serve as the Director of the Department of Public Works for Anne Arundel County. Thank you for the opportunity to testify in strong support of House Bill 1296, which establishes a regulatory framework for managed aquifer recharge, a critical tool for ensuring Maryland's long-term water sustainability. Maryland depends heavily on its groundwater resources. In Anne Arundel County alone, 100% of our drinking water comes from groundwater aquifers, which are under increasing stress due to population growth, land development, and climate change. Simply put, we are withdrawing more water than is naturally replenishing. If we do not act now, we risk long-term depletion of our most vital water source. That's where Managed Aquifer Recharge, or MAR, comes into play. MAR is a scientifically proven water management approach that allows us to replenish aquifers by safely reintroducing high-quality drinking water into the ground. This can be accomplished via various methods, including infiltration basins or injection wells, all of which are carefully monitored to safeguard water quality and protect the environment. Other states have already seen success with MAR programs that bolster their groundwater supplies. Maryland can do the same before water scarcity becomes a crisis. The passage of House Bill 1296 is essential because it provides a well-defined regulatory framework for establishing MAR pilot projects, ensuring they're implemented safely, effectively, and with proper oversight. In Anne Arundel County, we're actively exploring ways to integrate MAR into our water supply strategy. Passing House Bill 1296 is the first step to allow Maryland utilities to take proactive measures to protect groundwater resources and develop more sustainable approaches for the future. We appreciate the technical expertise provided by MDE and DNR in guiding this project and legislation, and I sincerely urge this committee to support House Bill 1296 and ensure Maryland remains a leader in sustainable water management.
Thanks. Chairman Gorman, Vice Chair Boyce, and members of this committee, I wanted to thank you for the opportunity to speak today in favor of House Bill 1296. My name is Gabe Coe, and I work for the Resilience Authority of Annapolis and Anne Arundel County. Thanks to the vision of this committee, which helped pass the enabling legislation in 2020, the Resilience Authority is the first body of its kind dedicated to developing and financing climate infrastructure projects. I want to focus my remarks on one key point. It's true that our region is not facing a groundwater crisis today. However, this vital resource is increasingly stressed due to population growth, urban development, new needs such as large data centers, and of course the growing impacts of climate change. Other states, such as California, Florida, and Virginia, have implemented similar programs to enhance groundwater supplies and combat issues like saltwater intrusion. However, in some of these cases, these programs were developed to respond to a specific emergency. The MAR pilot and House Bill 1296 presents an opportunity for the state to adopt a proactive and collaborative approach in exploring these technologies before water scarcity becomes a crisis. The passage of this bill would empower the state to oversee and regulate MAR projects, ensuring they are implemented safely and effectively. By collecting data and validating the pilot's effectiveness, together the state and Anne Arundel County can develop informed regulations and guidelines to support sustainable groundwater management. We can all be proud of the innovative leadership that Anne Arundel County has shown in partnership with the state and this committee on many environmental initiatives, including establishing the Resilience Authority, being the first county to submit nuisance flood plan strategies, first to incorporate climate into the comprehensive plan, being an early adopter of stormwater utility fees, and the first to work with the state to stand up a Watershed Stewards Academy. We're eager to add strategic managed aquifer recharge pilot to these accomplishments to proactively prepare before we face a water scarcity crisis. For these reasons, we respectfully request a favorable report on this bill.
Good afternoon, Chair Corman, Vice Chair Boyce, and members of the committee. My name is Gussie McGuire. I'm a staff scientist at the Chesapeake Bay Foundation testifying in support of House Bill 1296. As the others on this panel have already stated, managed aquifer recharge assists with water supply augmentation, mitigation of land subsidence, and combating saltwater intrusion in coastal aquifers. Lessons learned in Anne Arundel County's project would help inform coastal resiliency efforts elsewhere in the state, and making it a state managed permit would help expand that to other areas. Furthermore, Anne Arundel County's interest in the project began with an effort to reduce nutrient pollution being discharged from the county. The extremely high level of treatment required for managed aquifer recharge removes nitrogen, phosphorus, and other pollutants more effectively than traditional treatments, and they can remove contaminants that traditional treatment cannot, including pharmaceuticals and per- and polyfluoroalkyl substances, or PFAS chemicals. The proliferation of this level of treatment throughout the state would result in lower levels of pollutants reaching the Chesapeake Bay and its tributaries, and I believe that should be encouraged. I respectfully request the committee's favorable report on House Bill 1296. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a Gussie McGuire as well in your panel? Oh, I'm sorry. Is there a Matthew Fleming? Excuse me. I apologize, Gussie.
Matthew is traveling Japan right now, so I'm his stand-in for today.
Got it. Okay. Thank you. Sorry about that. Delegate Stein.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Delegate, thank you for bringing this bill. And you may have mentioned this in your testimony, but have you reviewed MDE's proposed amendments? And if so, are you okay with them or still discussing them?
Still discussing them. I'll let the county, if you want to add anything with MDE.
Yeah, we're working closely with MDE to come to agreement on the amendments.
Okay, so you hope to, that
Yes.
you and MDE will come to
Yes, I
agreed
believe we
amendments?
will.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Any additional questions on this bill? Okay, thank you. That concludes the hearing on House Bill 1296. We'll turn to House Bill 1299. Delegate Hornberger, Natural Resources, Western Maryland Elk.
Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon. Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, for the record, my name is Delegate Kevin Hornberger here on 1299 Natural Resources Elk, Western Maryland. So this is something that I've wanted to do for over a decade now, and life's all about timing. The reason I'm bringing this bill forward to you this year is because of the economic situation that we're facing here in Maryland. You might ask yourself, well, how does that relate to elk? Well, a couple reasons. One, in 2012, the state of Maryland looked into this. There was an economic impact study done, and at that point in time, it estimated that roughly $20 million in tourism would come to Western Maryland should this take place, okay? That's a pretty big number. And since 2012, a lot has changed in the world of native species reintroduction. Just to point out, our neighbors to the west, including West Virginia, North Carolina, Kentucky, Pennsylvania, and Virginia, have all successfully reintroduced elk as it is a native species of 46 states, including Maryland. Now, what this bill seeks to do is just identify what the carrying capacity of elk would be in Western Maryland. And as many of you know, we have an excess of 25,000 contiguous acres owned by the DNR. That would be the logical placement for this species of reintroduction. Now, you're probably also seeing in your testimony pack that there is some opposition to this bill. And what I will say is the groups that are opposing this opposed it in all those other states that I just listed to you. However, it's worked out, and it has been a tremendous boon from an economic standpoint to their tourism. We need this study now more than ever. I'm sure if you saw in the governor's budget, there's a reduction for tourism advertising from $6 million down to $3 million. Introducing elk in Western Maryland, should it be determined by the DNR that it can sustain a certain number, would supercharge our tourism. Virginia is seeing such success with this reintroduction that they would have never, all of their projections were way undervalued. They're seeing $30 and $40 million in tourism for folks coming to watch, especially during the mating season. I don't know how familiar you are with elk, but they sort of bugle to find a mate, and it's very popular. If you looked out west to Yellowstone, for example, they get visitors in excess of 450,000 people per year just to see the elk. Okay, so this is very exciting. There's also other financial benefits that could happen later on. That could include wildlife management in terms of hunting. In Pennsylvania, every year they auction off a permit to hunt one elk, and it brings, just alone for that permit, brings between $60,000 and $80,000 that goes towards conservation. Now, what are the costs? I will point that DNR has asked for an additional PIN to facilitate this. I would tend to push back on that, again, because the study has already been done here from an economic standpoint. It would more so look at what is that carrying capacity, and I believe that's something that could be done in-house. Secondly, I would say that that cost is going to be very much outshined by the revenue that it's going to bring in. And lastly, I just wanted to add that there's some talk in here about CWD and bovine and then transfer amongst those species. All of that is already here with our existing deer population. And in terms of the cost of implementing it, actually bringing the elk in, the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, which is a nonprofit, would there be approval and would there be some partnership? They would absorb most of those costs, and they would also facilitate the reintroduction, which would most likely come from Kentucky, as Kentucky is the only herd that does not currently have CWD that's local to us. And it's actually against federal law to transport animals that are live that have CWD. So they would be the most likely partner in this situation. Love to take questions. Again, I think this would be a huge financial asset for Western Maryland in a place that has had some decline over the years. Thank you.
Thank you. I think Delegate Siliberti has a question before I do.
Yep.
No, just as a footnote, elk are also quite a big draw in Colorado as well.
That's correct.
And they are rather large animals.
Yes, they're very large.
Big.
Yep, and again, they're native to this area, so it would be returned to the ecosystems of yore.
Thank you. So I would like to address the Farm Bureau's letter as well as DNR's letters. What they're saying is that it is a non-native species. And according to the Farm Bureau, it says within their policy book, they don't support elk being introduced in Maryland because it's a non-native species. And DNR states that they did do the study in 2011 and 2012, and they found that it would not actually be compatible for Western Maryland. They feel like if they would do a study again today, the results would be the same. So if you can speak to that.
Be happy to address that. Yes, they were elk. This isn't native species. I mean, just a quick Google search on your phone. If you look up the range of elk in North America, they were native to here. That's fake news. And then second, what was the second question in terms of compatibility? What had failed before, because this was set to go in 2012, it succumbed to NIMBYism. The reason that the elk were not reintroduced was because locals pushed back and said, we don't want this new species here. And they had a very amplified voice at these town halls, but they were a vast minority of the population. So a lot's changed again since then. We have all these neighboring states that have done so, and we can't let just a few individuals, sour the economic viability of Western Maryland.
I hear you. And just a last follow-up, and when you said there was once a species here, is there a specific species that you can speak to that would be introduced, or it's any elk anywhere?
Yeah, so the elk population, it was believed that there was subspecies of elk that lived here in the United States in this zone. However, we have no way of confirming that because they basically became extinct in this area before that sort of tracking was done.
So what time period are we talking?
So this would be like 1700s, early 1700s. You can imagine highly prized for hunters back then. So the species that we would be reintroducing, which is the same in all of our neighboring states, is the Rocky Mountain elk. And it's had success and created a sustainable population in these states. And on a long enough timeline, the elk would be back here as these herds continue to expand in Virginia and West Virginia. I think you had one other question.
Are there any other questions? Delegate Baker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Do you know how much land an elk requires to be able to survive?
Sure, that's a great question. And I'm not a scientist. That's why this bill, as written, asks the DNR to come up with a carrying capacity number for that state-owned parcel. That is the first step in any jurisdiction, in any state, for determining if this is viable. And that's all the bill does.
And how are we going to keep them confined to the 25,000 acres?
Excellent question. Excellent question. So in Elk County, Pennsylvania, where they had a successful reintroduction, the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, in partnership with the state, went into these areas where you have these large parcels and created food sources, native food sources, in those areas that keep those animals local. Okay. And that is the best practice for keeping these from migrating. As you know, they're a very large animal. It takes a tremendous amount of eating to sustain that weight. So they will pretty much stay in an area as long as there's a sustainable food source there. They have no desire to migrate anywhere else. Okay. And that's why I kind of push back on some of these, they're going to be crossing roads and going all, trotting on down to Montgomery County. That's just not going to happen.
Thank you, Delegate.
Maybe they want to go to Montgomery County. Delegate Lake.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Delegate Hornberger, so it's just an interesting idea. My husband and I actually have friends from Elk County, Pennsylvania, and it is quite the sort of spectator sport, I'm going to call it. They do give out hunting licenses, but people sort of follow this herd of elk all around, and they do not stay in Elk County. I do know that much. But my question is about, because you specify in the bill that this would be the home for these elk if they were introduced or reintroduced would be Allegheny and Garrett counties. And I couldn't help but notice that you and Delegate Ciliberti are the only two delegates on this bill. So my question is, how do our colleagues from Garrett and Allegheny counties feel about it?
Yes, so without naming names, and I went and polled all of them on this, most of them were involved in county government or state government when the 2012 study was done. They were all on board to execute this. Because of the Farm Bureau pushback, and again, some of the NIMBYism, they all said together, if the other one co-sponsor it, I will too. So I think they quietly support this, and I would ask if the committee is interested in pursuing this, that you have an individual conversations with them, because I didn't get any no's, but I didn't get any co-sponsors that I was looking for because of the NIMBYism that occurred. So I believe that they're in support of it, and I would challenge you to talk to them as well.
Thank you.
Yep.
I do not see, Delegate Healy.
Just a quick question. Isn't Elkton, Maryland in Cecil County?
It is, that's correct.
Okay, so why not there?
So I had a similar bill some years ago that would look at Cecil County because we have some large contiguous parcels as well. We have over 2,500 acres at Fair Hill. And the DNR told me that although that's a nice idea, it would be a lot better in Western Maryland where they have the mountainous region.
Thank you.
Yep, but great question.
Okay, thank you very much. That concludes Bill hearing on House Bill 1299.
Thanks so much.
We will turn to House Bill 1327, Delegate Weibel, Natural Resources, Maryland Heritage Areas Authority, Funding and Grants. Delegate Weibel, welcome back to the Environment and Transportation Committee. If you have a panel, bring them up.
Well, we're not looking to bring elk, but it does have a tourism component. So Chair Corman, Vice Chair Boyce, and members of the committee, for the record, I am Delegate Weibel. Please present House Bill 1327, Maryland Heritage Areas Authority Funding and Grants. This bill adjusts the maximum program open space funds that may be allocated to Maryland heritage areas. Currently, the limit is set at $6 million. This bill would raise the cap to $12 million. It's important to note that the bill does not mandate funding. It only raises a cap. The governor chooses the amount that's placed in the budget for the heritage areas. It's currently anywhere from $0 to $6 million, and this bill would raise that to $12 million. Obviously, if the proposal in this legislative session is to redirect POS funds to the general fund for a limited time, the funding would be $0. Heritage areas have been highly successful in promoting tourism and bringing an awareness to our state's rich history. You'll hear testimony today, and I thank you for your consideration and respectfully ask for a favorable report on House Bill 1327.
Good afternoon, and thank you for this opportunity. I'm Elizabeth Chateau, Director of the Heart of the Civil War Heritage Area, serving Carroll, Frederick, and Washington counties. The time is right to establish the possibility of a greater share of program open space funds to support the important investment made by Maryland Heritage Areas Authority in our revenue-producing place-based assets. Together, Maryland's 13 heritage areas bring about economic benefit to the tune of $2.4 billion in economic contribution, 40,000 jobs supported and sustained, and $320 million in local and state tax revenues generated annually. Potentially, House Bill 1327 will double those impact numbers. MHAA grants support heritage tourism-focused projects, but the law caps the budget at $6 million, 5.1 of which goes to our partners for grants. Each year, well-scoring, worthy projects go unfunded. On average, there's an $8 million funding gap, and sometimes it's much more. House Bill 1327 does not carry a spending mandate, but it would allow for MHAA appropriations of up to $12 million. Passing the law now means that when it makes fiscal sense for the state to take more advantage of the power of Maryland heritage areas to generate more tourism spending, create and sustain more jobs, and increase local and state tax bases, we will be poised and ready. This is forward-thinking and hopeful at a time when it is most needed, and thank you for your consideration.
Good afternoon, everyone. Excuse my allergy voice. My name's Dan Spedden. I'm President and CEO of the Hagerstown, Washington County Convention and Visitors Bureau, a 501c6 corporation with a mission to improve the economy of Hagerstown and Washington County through the promotion of travel and tourism. Our tourism office partners with and relies heavily upon the work of the Heart of the Civil War Heritage Area. Our heritage area also serves Frederick and Carroll counties. My tourism office focuses on attracting visitors to a variety of events, attractions, and destinations. Our heritage area, in addition to its preservation work, actively markets and promotes to attract the cultural and heritage tourists. Travelers to our cultural and historic sites are well-educated, high wage earners. They stay longer and they spend more money than your average visitor. My tourism office invests heavily in the operation of the heritage area, providing cash to sustain operations and programs. We also provide valuable matching dollars to make our heritage area eligible for grants. Funding for heritage areas is capped, and time and inflation tend to erode its impact. Lifting the cap on heritage area funding creates an opportunity for the program to grow in the future, to stay relevant, to remain a leader in the preservation of Maryland's cultural and historic resources, and to remain a solid partner with me, helping me grow the tourism economy in my community. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair and committee members. Thank you for your support of the Maryland Heritage Area Authority since its inception 25 years ago. Your distinguished predecessors recognized the advantages of collaborating with communities to preserve the historic sites. The MHA has been a valuable investment benefiting regions from the lower Susquehanna to the Chesapeake shoreline, the western Maryland mountaintops, southern Maryland, and any areas in between. In the words of the Sankofa, we must look back to the past so that we can understand how we became what we are and move forward to a better future. The program preserves our history and our culture because it matters. As we approach 250 years of the American history, Marylanders take pride in our heritage and our progress. But I think you want to know, how does that equate in the face of our current budget crisis? The MHA provides more financial benefit to the state than the funding it receives. The program contributes a total of $2.4 billion to Maryland's economy, supports and sustains 33,850 full-time and part-time jobs statewide, and generates an economic impact of $319.8 million. This indicates a significant return on your investment. The MHA program provides benefit to Maryland's future and contributes economic value throughout the state and to your constituents. We thank you for your support of HB 1327. Thank you.
And thank you, Shantae, who is coming to us from the Baltimore National Heritage Area, just for the record.
I didn't say that.
No.
Do I got 2 more minutes? No.
I better hurry up. I am Lucille Walker from the Southern Maryland National Heritage Area. We are both a state and national heritage area. As you've heard, there are 13 heritage areas in Maryland. It touches every county and the city of Baltimore. We are funded through the transfer tax, through Program Open Space, another valuable program in Maryland. Maryland is unique. Maryland is only one of 2 states in the entire nation that have a state-based heritage area program. And that shows that Maryland values heritage, but also the economics of heritage tourism. We are joined today, as we've been sitting here, you've noticed us. We have people here today from the heritage areas and heritage area supporters who have come from the north of Maryland, the west of Maryland, the south of Maryland, the east of Maryland, and everywhere in between. Some of them have traveled hours and hours and hours, and over a Windy Bay Bridge as well, to show their support. And I would like, if it's all right, to ask them to stand. Thank you. Please stand. Woo! Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thank you all for taking the time to be here.
Oh, did I run out?
Yep, you done.
Oh, okay.
You done, you done.
All right. Just in conclusion, these are difficult economic times in our state, and the Maryland Heritage Area Program, we're part of the solution. This legislation queues up Maryland for future growth. This legislation invests in Maryland's future, and I urge a favorable report. Thank you all.
Great, we have a question from Delegate Jacobs.
All right, now. So, Delegate Weibel, I see you got a lot of positive testimony here today. It's very unusual. And,
For me, right?
for you. But in all seriousness, I mean, I personally know of many of the success stories of these heritage areas, and I've got one of my representatives here in the audience today that brought some testimony, stories of Chesapeake Canarsie as well, and I know the good things that all of them do. They do a great number of things, and I'm kind of joking a little bit about all that positive testimony, but for the most part, everything's positive except for two, DNR and Garrett County Chamber. So I was wondering if you read DNR's letter of opposition, if you got any comments you'd like to make on their remarks.
I have not seen their letter.
Okay, I'm sorry.
What is the basis of the opposition?
Well, because you're increasing the capital funding transferred from program open space. They have a concern with increasing the cap.
Delegate, may I speak to that after you?
Yeah, I know that we initially had a concern from MACO and MML, concern about potentially local funds being taken, and we clarified that in the final draft of the bill. I think you've heard the positive results of the heritage area funding, so the return on the investment is much greater than the additional $6 million that we're asking to be allocated to the fund. And again, the governor, it's up to the governor. This just raises a cap. He can choose to not fund any of it, or he could choose to fund $12 million. And I think it would depend annually on the grants that these folks receive as to the eventual amount of funding that would be allocated to the program.
Yeah, well, I think they have a history of producing, very good projects, and I would hope that this would get favorable response, so that, I mean, the governor can choose, but I mean, this is one group of organizations that do a lot for the state of Maryland. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Delegate Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Delegate Weibel, and my constituents who are here. A question, though, again, back to this funding. I see that the way they want to utilize funding is from a lot from program open space. And if I remember reading budget round 1, 2, 3, whatever, MALF, POS, and Rural Legacy have all been cut till 2029. I don't know if things have been readjusted in the BRFA because I haven't had time to dig through that. So my question is, if this thing's been zeroed out till 2020 until POS, what would be the possible game plan for instituting funding to support these programs in the long run? Because they, as Delegate Jacobs pointed out, they are critically important to everybody.
Well, this bill would set the stage for addressing the funding shortfalls in the grants in the long run. Obviously, in the short run, if there's no money available at all, it's a concern.
Then I guess the second question is recognizing, and we had this discussion last year on the floor with the budget, every county, or every delegate, I should put it that way, looks forward to some POS money for their county's programs and projects. Looking where the heritage areas are and looking at the various counties, I wonder if the counties and the heritage areas are in sync on all this.
Well, when we first proposed the legislation, we had a representative from MACO there, and they were concerned that it would take away from county funding portion. So that's why in the language in the bill, it specifies that it only would take away from the state's portion, not the county.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, just to clarify, just because there's a budget proposal downstairs, that doesn't mean that's going to happen, Delegate Morgan, but something to think about. Any additional questions for the sponsors panel? Okay, we have virtual favorable testimony from Laura Houston, Preservation, Maryland.
She didn't come.
Ms. Houston, can you hear us? Please go ahead.
Yes. Hi, apologies. It's taken a second for my video to start.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to provide oral testimony in support of this bill. My name is Laura Houston. I'm here on behalf of Preservation Maryland, Maryland's statewide nonprofit dedicated to harnessing the power of and advocating for the state's exceptional historic places for the benefit of its communities. As Director of Preservation Maryland's Historic Property Redevelopment Program, which focuses on breathing new life into historic structures through restoration and adaptive reuse, I've had the honor of experiencing firsthand the substantial impact that a grant from MHAA can have. These grants have been critical to the success of our projects, such as the adaptive reuse of the historic Ellicott City Jail in the Patapsco Valley Heritage Area, and the stabilization and elevation of the last City Dock Waterman's Cottage in the Chesapeake Crossroads Heritage Area. MHAA dollars close the gap on project costs and allow us to more fully address building and community needs. But more than that, projects like the ones funded by MHAA play an important role in stimulating the economy. They provide income for local businesses and firms who are contracted to do the work. They reactivate underutilized spaces, generate interest in respective localities, and create destinations that draw heritage tourists who, as was noted earlier, are proven to stick around longer and spend more. But the industry is only seeing costs for such crucial projects increase, reducing the breadth of MHA's impact on the places that matter to Marylanders if the scale of the funds the program can award does not also increase. I urge your favorable consideration of this bill so that the history and character that make this state one of a kind can remain and be shared with those who aren't as lucky as we are to call this state home. And lastly, I'd be remiss if I didn't use a few seconds of my time to commend the staff at MHAA who do an exemplary job providing technical assistance and information to constituents like myself. You're sincerely appreciated. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I don't see any questions, so we'll turn to unfavorable in-person testimony. Amber Sanders from the Garrett County Chamber of Commerce, if she's here. Going once, going twice. Okay, that concludes the bill here on House Bill 1327. We'll turn to House Bill 1415, Delegate Weibel, Environment, BEPS, and Energy Use Intensity Targets Exemptions.
Okay. Good to you. Thank you so much. Okay.
Chair Corman, Vice Chair Boyce, and members of the committee, again, I'm Delegate Weibel. For the record, please introduce House Bill 1415, Environment, Building Energy Performance Standards. This bill really addresses an issue of fairness. As you're aware, the Climate Solutions Now Act was passed by the legislature in 2022. Among its many requirements, CSNA imposed numerous building energy performance standards by statute and regulation. This bill attempts to address one of those requirements. It would exempt covered buildings that received a use and occupancy permit prior to the effective date of the act from its requirements until such time that these buildings or their components have reached end of life in lieu of some arbitrary date. The requirements of the bill are reasonable. It doesn't accept those buildings in perpetuity. It addresses an issue of the cost of doing business in Maryland, especially when compared to our competitor states. The Chamber of Commerce, in its 2024 Red Book, ranks Maryland in terms of that competitiveness with other states. Maryland is ranked 31st in the top states for doing business. Virginia's ranked number 1. Pennsylvania is 17th. Maryland is ranked 47th for the cost of doing business, the 4th most expensive in the nation. Maryland's ranking dropped from 24th to 37th in business friendliness. Maryland ranked 49th in job growth, adding just 17,200 non-agricultural jobs during the most recent year. Maryland ranked 45th in business tax climate. Maryland's population declined by 10,000 folks under the latest statistics available. In Washington County, as you know, from Hagerstown, you can drive 6 miles north or south and see the results of this regulation. Our economy appears to have stagnated and the trend is going in the wrong direction. I do believe that passage of this legislation could help reverse that trend. One other issue addressed by this bill is that of electricity supply and demand. By following a reasonable approach to BEPS implementation, it gives the state the necessary time to address electricity issues, including 40% of the state's electricity being imported from other states, increasing electricity demand, exacerbated by decreasing generation due to the closing of fossil fuel plants and rising electricity prices. Just based on PJM's most recent auction, electricity prices are projected to increase by 24% in some areas for the generation component. The state is looking at electricity supply in this legislative session, including the Speaker's and Chairman Wilson's House Bill 1035, Public Utilities, Electricity Generation Planning, Procurement, Permitting, and Co-location. Finding a resolution to electricity supply is not an easy one, as it takes in excess of 10 years to construct a new power plant. I do want to mention the fiscal note, as I love fiscal notes, as you all know. MDE estimates it would cost them $1 million to implement the requirements of this bill, although the same fiscal note also states that a reliable estimate cannot be made. I believe all that is needed to implement the requirements of the bill is simply to inquire of the counties, the buildings covered under this proposed legislation, as the information would likely be readily available by simply querying the various counties' respective permit databases. I thank you for your consideration and respectfully ask you for a favorable report on House Bill 1415.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. I'm Scott Waitlevich with Columbia Gas of Maryland, and we support House Bill 1415. The committee has more detailed written testimony outlining Columbia's support of the legislation, and I believe the committee may also have supportive testimony from the Allegheny and Washington County chambers. As the bill sponsor indicated, this legislation would basically help covered building owners with defraying significant costs that they will incur under the BEPS regulations until their building components, whether it be HVAC equipment or other systems, fail or at the end of their useful life. As I've discussed with the committee previously, the BEPS regulations will force covered building owners to incur billions of dollars in costs to electrify and weatherize their buildings. These significant costs will ultimately be paid for by all Marylanders throughout the state as the BEPS regulations can get implemented. Columbia believes the provisions of House Bill 1415 are appropriately and reasonably crafted policies to reduce the significant costs to covered building owners related to the regs until the building equipment needs to be changed at the end of its useful life. We urge a favorable report on House Bill 1415.
Hi, my name's Robin Faree. I'm the president of Bowman Development Corporation based in Williamsport, Maryland. Bowman is the largest commercial developer in Washington County. We have 29 buildings in Washington County that are 35,000 square feet or larger that are subject to these building energy performance standards. Obviously, we're concerned as we learn more about these. We have no idea of the cost and practicality of these standards. I'm here to support House Bill 1450 because it begins to offer at least a little relief to these standards. This bill will not force building owners and tenants to replace expensive HVAC equipment until the end of their useful life. For an example, we have a 1 million square foot Class A distribution warehouse building. It's multi-tenant. One of the tenants is Volvo Powertrain, the largest manufacturer in Washington County and one of the largest manufacturers in the state. The HVAC equipment, the air rotation units, gas-fired, the replacement cost or the cost today is about $400,000 to replace those units. They have a life of about 20 or 25 years. This bill would make us, the standards would make us replace those units with electric units with no idea of the cost of the electric units, but we know it's going to take 4 or 5 times the amount of power. And where's that power going to come from? So, in general, obviously, we're concerned about these standards. Any relief is appreciated. And in our case, it's causing our owner to reconsider investing buildings in Washington County. In fact, we are now constructing a 120,000 square foot building in Berkeley, West Virginia, County, West Virginia. He's a local guy, invested locally. He doesn't want to invest out of the state. Thanks.
Thanks very much. I do not see any questions, but I know we have additional Favorable testimony from Sarah Price, Maryland Retailers Alliance.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, honorable committee members. One more time, Sarah Price on behalf of the Maryland Retailers Alliance, in strong support of this legislation. Me too. Thank you very much.
All right. Seeing no further questions, that concludes Bill hearing on House Bill 1415.
Thank you.
I think we're going to jump to HB 1360, Delegate Chi, Environment Road Salt Outdoor Storage.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon, Madam Vice Chair. It's good to be back at ENT. I know it's been a long day, long session. I'm Delegate Lilici here to present HB 1360. It's about road salt again. I know you have heard this multiple times, so I'll keep it quick. This committee has heard several times my presentation about mitigating road salt in the past, and the last year passed my bill, which unfortunately did not make it all the way across the street. So this year we are addressing the same problem, but from a different and a simpler angle. As amended by MDE, the Maryland Department of the Environment, HB 1360 requires salt or de-icing materials to be properly stored so that they are not exposed to rain or runoff. That's basically what this bill does. And it also requires MDE to provide regulations so that it's more specific guidance for those applied. So I don't need to repeat, as I did in the past, about the harm of road salt runoff into our waterways and streams and how chloride level has exponentially increased like a tenfold in the past decades, harming our health and natural habitat, infrastructure, and drinking water. You have heard it multiple times. So this is a very simple remedy to mitigate salt runoff. MDE supports this legislation with some clarifying languages in the amendment that we fully support. And also MML also supports this with amendment along with the associated utility contractors. So we believe MDE can do the work required in this bill with its existing resources with these public and private partners. As I mentioned, like MML, the municipalities and local counties. So with that, I urge a favorable report. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Vice Chair, committee members for being here today and allowing me to testify. And thank you to Delegate Chi, who's been working hard the last several years to get a bill passed that would help reduce salt and de-icer pollution in Maryland. My name is Abby Heilman, and I represent the Isaac Walton League of America, one of the oldest conservation organizations in the United States, whose national office is based here in Maryland. Since 2018, the League has worked to educate community members about the impacts of road salt pollution, has supplied community scientists with salt watch tests to test for salt pollution, and has provided trainings and resources to reduce salt pollution nationwide. As it stands currently, only MS4 and certain discharge permit holders have road salt storage requirements. Private sector operators can leave uncovered piles of salt and de-icing materials in parking lots exposed to precipitation and runoff, which become a permanent pollutant as there is no feasible way to remove salt once it enters the environment. Requiring proper salt and de-icer storage is a way to reduce salt pollution without sacrificing safety. For each ton of salt applied, a cost of approximately $74 for the salt itself and $213 in application cost, there is an estimated up to $17,000 cost in damages. Salt is incredibly corrosive to our infrastructure, such as bridges, roadways, sidewalks, pipes, as well as vehicles, appliances, and so much more. It's also toxic to our freshwater aquatic life. Salt is also a threat to drinking water. It is not removed by water utilities, which puts individuals on low salt diets at risk. Salt from de-icing was also one of the factors that led to the Flint water crisis in 2014, as it corroded the interior of pipes as water was being pumped out to residents, resulting in lead in drinking water. There is no safe level of lead exposure. Maryland has an estimated over 71,000 lead service lines throughout the state, so reducing salt pollution is necessary to prevent catastrophe for Maryland residents. Thank you for considering Bill 1360, and I hope you have a favorable report. Thank you.
Thank you. I do not see any questions, so we will turn to unfavorable testimony from Dom Butchko from the Maryland Association of Counties.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Dom with Mako here in respectful opposition to House Bill 1360. Right now, we are in a fiscal environment where the state is poised to either cut aid or shift costs onto the counties to the tune of $250 million, and frankly, that figure is rising every day. Under this legislation, counties would be required to go out and actually conduct inspections of private businesses, private salt owners, et cetera, to make sure that they're in compliance. The way the legislation reads, it says a county storm management authority in coordination with a department shall enforce this. Now, important note for county storm management authorities, these mostly exist, almost entirely exist within County Department of Public Works. So these are engineers, these are people going out and building bridges, building pipes, et cetera. They're not regulatory bodies. None of these management agencies or authorities have regulatory authority, nor do they have the inspectors or expertise to go out and do this. We're talking potentially a few $100,000 to $1 million for the jurisdictions that would be impacted to stand up a program and start to do inspections like this. Just considering the fiscal constraints of the times that we're in, we really do want to work with the state to address this, but we have significant concerns with this legislation and we urge an unfavorable report.
Thank you. Any questions for Mako? Okay, that concludes bill hearing on House Bill 1360. We are going to jump to House Bill 1342. Delegate Lehman. House Bill 1342, Delegate Lehman. Pesticide and pest control, state-owned property, pesticide use restrictions, and pollinator habitat. If you have a panel, feel free to bring them up. I know some folks are virtual. Yeah, sorry, the other delegate is voting in committee, so we're going to start with you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and esteemed ENT colleagues. I was going to say I have Rachel Jones from the Department of Agriculture, and I think I have a couple of other witnesses. I see one virtual. But thank you for the opportunity to present House Bill 1342, pesticide and pest control, state-owned property, pesticide use restrictions, and pollinator habitat. And I am asking that you support this bill with amendments. For the record, I'm Delegate Mary Lehman, and I am asking for a favorable report of House Bill 1342. The bill tasks the Department of Agriculture with developing a model pesticide management plan for state government agencies managing state-owned property. The MDA management plan will prohibit the use of certain toxic pesticides only for aesthetic purposes, sometimes referred to as cosmetic purposes. Think of the use of glyphosate herbicides, the active ingredient in Roundup, that are used for the purpose of killing dandelions or clover, which are harmless weeds. The MDA plans must only allow for the use of pesticides that pose less human health or environmental risks. The goal of HB 1342 is to require units of state government that are not already doing so to better manage pesticide use, which will benefit the public health of Marylanders and the environment of our great state, including our treasured Chesapeake Bay and its tributaries. I do have amendments to the bill. First of all, I am amending it to exempt both the Department of Natural Resources and the State Highway Administration. They are the state's two largest land management agencies with nearly 455,000 acres between them. And I am doing this only because both are required by prior legislation to develop and implement pollinator management plans. And those include pesticide management provisions for pesticides that are toxic to bees and other pollinators. I also removed the separate pollinator management plan provision for other agencies in the bill, but I will explore bringing that back next year as standalone legislation. So despite well-documented pesticide risks, colleagues, I regret to tell you that pesticide use in Maryland is actually on the rise. According to USDA's report on Maryland pesticide statistics, more than 3 million pounds of pesticides were used in Maryland in 2022. Of this total, 85% or 2.6 million pounds were herbicides for weed control. This represents an eye-popping 33% increase in pesticide use over what was applied in just 2 years before in 2020. Although there are many good reasons to use herbicides to control weeds, for example, in agriculture, weed control actually helps improve crop yields. The use of EPA-registered herbicides for purely aesthetic purposes introduces toxic chemicals into the environment only for the purpose of improving the visual appeal of an area. The idea for the bill is actually borrowed from Montgomery County, Maryland, which passed a law banning aesthetic pesticide use on public land and on private lawns. The law has been in place since 2015. It survived a court challenge in 2019 and has been effectively administered. In fact, it has helped Montgomery County dramatically cut its use of glyphosate herbicides to just 5,435 pounds per year. If you think that sounds like a lot, it is actually the second lowest in the state, behind only Allegheny County. By comparison, Baltimore County used 73,190 pounds, and Wacomico County tops the list, using 265,639 pounds. Like in Montgomery County, the restriction on weed control or aesthetic pesticide use will not apply to land that is farmed. I'm going to say that again. It will not apply to agricultural land, nor will it apply to golf courses. The opposition from many farming interests to this bill is based on the false assumption that it would apply to farmland. It does not, and it never was going to. In limiting the use of pesticides for aesthetic purposes on state land, the bill represents a small step forward to reduce the amount of more toxic pesticides applied by state government on state property. Outside of DNR and SHA, state agencies own another 38,000 plus acres of land that would be subject to this limitation. So to summarize, the bill requires that MDA partner with DNR to develop a model pesticide management plan that would then be used by other units of state government that manage state-owned property to develop plans for those tracts of land that they manage. It would also require that the model plan essentially prohibit the use of more toxic pesticides for purely aesthetic purposes on state land. The bill does not limit or does not intend to limit the use of more toxic pesticides for other aesthetic purposes. For example, the bill allows the use of EPA-registered pesticides for controlling pests while engaged in agriculture, for controlling invasive species and disease vectors, and for weed management for other than aesthetic purposes. In closing, it is important for Maryland to do what it can to reduce environmental loading of toxic pesticides whose sole purpose is to improve the appearance of a tract of state-owned land. HB 1342 helps ensure that harsh pesticides are not used on state-owned property for purely aesthetic reasons. Thank you so much for your consideration, and I urge a favorable report.
Okay. Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee, Rachel Jones. So MDA, with the amendments, supports this bill. We think there would be an easy lift. Our pesticide regulation section could easily use the plans that we already have. You'll see in our written testimony that we have an existing managed pollinator protection plan and a pesticide management plan. We also have an integrated pest management plan, IPMs for schools, that is utilized to basically outline what kinds of pesticides can be used and when and for what. And so between those three existing plans, MDA would work with the existing entities or agencies that manage state-owned land to tailor a model plan for those that would basically specify when and how they would apply pesticides on a limited basis. And we appreciate the work of the sponsor to put in those exemptions for DNR and for SHA, because of course they already have plans. DNR's plan particularly is very extensive. I think it's 32 or 36 pages, but it outlines for exactly which pests and weeds they can use pesticides. And so we would coordinate with them, as we don't own any land or manage any land at MDA, but we know that DNR is sort of the expert there. And so we would coordinate with them. And again, our existing staff would be able to easily do that. And so with that, we ask for a favorable report.
Thank you. I have a question from Delegate Healy.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I want to focus on the amendments that you're proposing, especially about the pollinator protection, because I mean we did that legislation a while ago, and I just want to make sure that because you're not listing neonics in among the pesticides that you have. At least I didn't see it. I mean, the Pollinator Protection Act of 2016 basically dealt with neonicotinoid pesticides. So my question is, why aren't they in your plan for not using pesticides that are harmful?
So we took out, or one of the amendments is to take out the pollinator management.
Sorry, hold on one second. Doug Lehman, sorry, we had to reset the mic, so hold on one second. Okay, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Delegate Lehman. Sorry to interrupt you. We had to reset the mic, so you were knocked out for a second, but we're good now, so go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not entirely clear on your question, Delegate Healy, but I did say when I talked about the amendments that we are removing the separate pollinator management plan that was going to go alongside the pesticide management plan, and that I might revisit that next year for other agencies. I was not aware when I had the bill drafted that DNR had such an extensive plan already in place for its 400,000 plus acres.
Okay, so you don't include neonics in your list of pesticides, or you have a list of pesticides that are covered in this, right? Or are they just described? I mean, there's multiple pages attached to this.
Yeah, go ahead. I didn't see you there, Megan.
Hi. I think I can answer your question. So the regular.
Can you introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Megan Stallard. I'm a legislative intern for Delegate Lehman, and I will also be testifying on this bill. But the legislation specifies certain federal listings for what constitutes a listed pesticide, and those are the less harmful pesticides that will still be allowed to be used for aesthetic purposes. So that's updated on a federal level, and it can be found in the federal code. We can get the specifics of that to you.
I really would appreciate it, and I'll talk offline about this. I don't want to take any more time today, but okay. I'm concerned about this legislation. Thank you.
Delegate Morgan, did you have a question?
I did. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Very quickly, this only applies to Delegate Lehman? I apologize. This only applies to state land, correct?
Yes.
So it doesn't affect schools or anything like that?
No, it doesn't, but Ms. Jones did mention a plan that's in place that does affect schools. That's already in place. It's not part of this bill.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I do not see any other questions, so I know you have additional.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, in response also to Delegate Haley, we will definitely follow up. There were some challenges with the drafting of the bill, and for example, when one of our colleagues here on the committee signed on, she had a question that should have been obvious, but with the way it was drafted, it was not. So we've run into a couple of challenges like the one you raised.
Okay, and somehow, Delegate, I mean,
and we'll follow up.
your own intern is favorable with amendment on your bill, where you're favorable. So we'll see how this goes, but we'll bring up Megan Stollard, favorable with amendment on her own boss's bill.
Good afternoon, Chair Corman, Vice Chair Boyce, and honorable members of the committee. My name is Megan Stallard. I'm a sophomore at Poolesville High School in Montgomery County and the chair of the MCPS Student Climate Action Council, or SCAC. This testimony is not on behalf of the SCAC. However, as a student leader and environmental advocate, I urge a favorable report in committee on Bill HB 1342 with amendments. As lawmakers, the basis of your work is the careful balance of risk versus reward. Pesticides present a clear health and environmental risk. Of the 40 most common lawn care pesticides, 26 are carcinogenic. 24 can leach into our drinking water. 24 are neurotoxins. 24 are endocrine disruptors, and 21 affect reproductive systems. Of those same 40 pesticides, 39 are toxic to aquatic creatures, which is so important considering our proximity to the Chesapeake Bay. 21 have been detected in groundwater, and 33 are toxic to pollinators, according to nonprofit Beyond Pesticides. When used necessarily to prevent the spread of illness, for example, the rewards of pesticides can reasonably outweigh the risks. But what about the pesticides we use to make the grass look greener? I ask you, what purpose does that serve? Is it enough of a benefit to outweigh the undeniable harm? This bill seeks to lower the use of pesticides on state land when it is not necessary. It does so with a pesticide management plan, which allows flexibility while providing a long-term comprehensive strategy to avoid excessive and unnecessary pesticide use. The amendments I support are the same ones presented by Delegate Lehman, an exception for DNR and SHA, and a removal of the additional restrictions on 20% of state lands to protect pollinators. We would like to return to this aspect in the future, but as amended, this bill is a step in the right direction towards a greener future for my generation and those to follow. For those reasons, I urge a favorable report in committee on Bill 1342. Thank you.
Great job, Megan. We're going to go to our, that's right, we can give her a round. Good job.
Madam Chair, a point of personal privilege. So each year during the interim, I challenge my interns to come up with at least one bill idea of their own. And this bill idea was actually Ms. Stallard's idea.
Thank you so much. Good job.
Give her credit for that.
Good job. We're going to call virtual witnesses that are favorable. First, it is Marie Laporte, or Laporte, sorry.
Tori Laporte testifying on behalf of the Maryland Sierra Club. We support HB 1342 as it will help protect humans, wildlife, including important pollinators, and native plants on our state lands. It has the added potential of demonstrating by its example and teachings the advantages of careful selection of pesticides and restrained application. It's widely proven that pesticides have adverse impacts on the environment and human health, causing a multitude of serious health concerns. In Maryland and worldwide, excessive use of pesticides is one of the primary culprits of the biodiversity crisis. Over the last 50 years, the number of American birds has declined by nearly 30%. 96% of American terrestrial birds and many other animals eat insects, which have been hit particularly hard by excessive pesticides. The decline in insects also impacts human food propagation. Over 70% of the world's most important crops for human nutrition require bee pollination. According to the U.S. Geological Survey, in almost all crops, native bees are the primary pollinator, or they significantly supplement the activity of European honeybees. Per Maryland's DNR, Maryland has seen 28 of our native bee species become rare, threatened, or endangered. These native bees pollinate our agricultural crops as well as our native plants. However, pesticides have also been shown to cause up to a 43% decline in bee species sightings in the U.S. We agree with the bill's exception allowing the use of herbicides to manage non-native invasive species, as invasive plants constitute another major cause of habitat and biodiversity loss. We're encouraged that the Maryland Department of Agriculture supports this bill, and with its passage, will develop a management plan for state lands that adjust pesticide use to protect native flora and fauna, including pollinators. For all these reasons, we respectfully request a favorable report for HB 1342. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Laporte. Now we have David Arndt virtually as well.
Good afternoon, Chair Boyce and committee members. My name is Dave Arndt, a Baltimore resident, a chemical engineer, a retiree of NIH, where I was the product owner for PubChem and the co-chair of the Maryland Legislative Coalition Climate Justice Wing. I'm also the director of the Locust Point Community Garden in Baltimore. At our community garden, we carefully manage pollinator-friendly areas so there are flowers throughout the year. We also include feed plants that foster larvae and caterpillars that will transform into pollinators. We have 5 beehives. However, we also like to boast of our 8 other native bee types that call the garden their home, or at least their restaurant. We depend on bees, moths, and butterflies to pollinate our vegetables and fruit. Even though we are a pesticide, herbicide-free garden, we had 1 hive fail due to colony collapse disorder. Unfortunately, we cannot control pesticide use outside of our garden. Please be aware that bees travel up to 5 miles to get their food, and monarch butterflies can travel over 100 miles a day. Also troubling is the yearly decline in monarch butterfly populations, even though we had hundreds of milkweed plants and other plants for them to feast on. The main culprits are pesticides, loss of habitat, and climate change. Fortunately, we know how to help them. First, by protecting areas' existing bee habitat. Then by expanding habitat by planting pollinator-friendly plants on public lands. Then instituting at least no-mow April and May. And finally, by ending the use of many pesticides and herbicides that are killing them and affecting their food supply. This bill is a great first step in saving our bees and other pollinators. For all those reasons, I strongly support HB 1342 and urge a favorable report. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Good to see you. Next, we have favorable with amendment. Jay Feldman, Beyond Plastics. Jay, you can begin. Jay, can you hear us? Give you another minute. I think something's wrong with your audio. Can't hear you at all. Jay, if you can hear me, we cannot hear you. So we see your lips moving, but we cannot hear you. Can he see me? Okay. I hate to. Jay, we would.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, okay, here we go.
I'm so sorry.
Okay, no problem,
Honorable
please go
Chair,
ahead.
members of the committee, I'm Jay Feldman, Executive Director.
You go ahead, please go ahead, we can hear you. Please go ahead, turn off your stream if you're watching it, and so that you can testify. Thank you. Please restart the clock. Go ahead and talk. Hello? Jay? Can you hear? Can you please begin? I can hear you. Please begin. Please begin.
Okay, now let me start over. Honorable Chair, members of the committee, I'm Jay Feldman, Executive Director of the Public Health Environmental Group Beyond Pesticides.
I think something is happening on your line, and we can hear you, but you personally keep stopping. So if you can just continue, because you have a minute and 30 seconds left, we'd appreciate it. Just keep going. Just keep going.
Honorable
just
Chair,
keep going.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Please testify.
Honorable Chair, members of the committee, I'm Jay Feldman, Executive Director of the Public Health Environmental Group Beyond Pesticides. On behalf of Maryland membership, Beyond Pesticides supports HB 1342 with amendments outlined in our written statement. Thank you to Delegate Lehman for bringing this legislation forward. The language of HB 1342 limits the reach of the bill to insecticides and only herbicides used for aesthetic purposes. The language should be broader with exemptions only for public health and invasive weeds as defined under existing Maryland law. We suggest that the exemption, quote, if applied around or near foundation of a building be deleted. This clause will allow the use of harmful systemic pesticides, including those harmful to pollinators that are around or near a building foraging or pollinating ornamental plants. As our written statement reflects, we urge that the bill language be broadened to petrochemicals in land management on state lands, including pesticides and synthetic fertilizers. It has been shown that these chemicals are not needed, and the bill identifies allowed substances as permitted under federal organic law. As a state and on state lands, we urge the elimination of petrochemical pesticides and fertilizers to address the existential health, biodiversity, and climate crises of our day. The current introduction of synthetic pesticides and fertilizers into soil is destructive of soil microbial life and adversely affects healthy soil systems and ecosystem resiliency, resulting in a cycle of chemical dependency. Maryland
Thank you so much.
Should be a leader through its state lands management policy to provide for a livable future.
Thank you so
With
much
the
for your
urgent need to
testimony,
transition
Mr.
to
Feldman.
Land management, HB 1342.
Thank you. Okay. Are there any, the beauty, the blessing and the curse of virtual. Does anyone have any questions for Delegate Lehman or for Ms. Megan or for Ms. Rachel? Yes, Delegate Jim.
I'm just wondering if you're aware that there are some organic certified pesticides this bill would still allow that are actually more toxic to bees than some of the synthetics. Are you aware of those? Organics?
Sure. I don't have the specific federal listing. Are you aware of the federal listing that's used in this bill to define organic pesticides?
I'm not looking at that. I'm just wondering if
Do you have a copy of the letter?
if you were aware that there are organic pesticides that are more harmful to bees than
Do you have a definition?
If I may.
synthetics.
So a listed pesticide means a pesticide of which the active ingredients are recommended by the National Organic Standards Board in accordance with the federal code, right? So that's line 10 or so, or a pesticide designated as a minimum risk pesticide under the Federal Insecticide, Fungicide, and Rodenticide Act. So to answer your question, Delegate, we are using the federal standards of organic pesticides, and while those may be flawed, it's ultimately a better system instead of requiring a Maryland state agency to continually update the standards for an organic pesticide. We can rely on this reliably updated federal standard.
All right, so Rachel,
Yeah.
you know I was going down that road, right?
Yes.
What standard are you using?
So our pesticide regulation section would look at all of that. They would need to coordinate with every agency that manages the state-owned land. They're going to find out what pesticides they're already using, and then we keep a list. And so we know what is potentially more harmful or a restricted use pesticide and what isn't. And it would be our staff's job in developing the model plan to determine what's going to be best and least harmful for the environment.
But you're using your state standard, not a federal standard, is that correct?
Well, MDA often defers to federal standards. So our staff would look at what the federal standard is as outlined in the bill, and then they would make a determination on what's the least harmful pesticide to use for those specific properties owned by those specific agencies.
Even if it was an organic that could be more dangerous for bees?
I'd like to say with some confidence that our staff would choose the least detrimental, whether it's organic or chemical. They're not just going to make a decision and say, well, it's organic, it's automatically the best choice. Our team would make a decision and put in the plan what they believe was truly best for the environment.
Thank you.
Delegate Foley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And my question is for Megan. So you're a junior at Poolsville High School, is that correct?
Sophomore.
Sophomore. at Poolsville High School. Well, that's terrific. So my question is, living in beautiful Poolsville is with so many plants and pollinators around, is that what inspired you to do this bill?
So I actually don't live in Poolsville. I do go to school there. I drive past the beautiful cornfields every day. So that is actually not what inspired me to do this bill. Last year, I competed in a National History Day tournament, and I researched Rachel Carson and the history of the environmental movement, which actually began right here in Maryland, when Rachel Carson in 1962 published Silent Spring, the book about the impacts of pesticides. So that's what inspired me.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Delegate Healy.
Yeah, I'm sorry about this, but I have to ask, I'm going to call you Delegate Jones. I want to know, I know that you said that the bill would talk about, and what your practice is to protect the environment, but we have specific legislation, obviously, to protect pollinators. And I just want to make sure that in the mix of protecting the environment, we don't undermine the protections we have put in place for pollinators.
Absolutely, and I think that's one of the reasons the amendment says we would coordinate with DNR on the pollinator piece, even though the bill as amended would just require MDA to come up with a pesticide management plan and not a pesticide and pollinator management plan, because we know that the state-owned properties, many of them do have pollinator gardens or pollinators located there. We would consult with DNR and say, what do you think is best for this type of pollinator, because they're already managing that. And like I said, their plan
I know,
is...
it's a whole issue. I mean, pollinators forage over 5 miles, and they also, some of these are systemic pesticides. They're not just sprayed on or sprinkled on or applied. Mm-hmm. They're actually inside some of the plants. So I have real concerns about the effect of this bill on all the work that we've already done on that.
Sure.
That's all.
We would not, any plan that we would develop would not supersede any existing state law. We have to adhere to that as an agency, and again, we have.
Okay, that's all I wanted to know, is that it's not going to undermine what we've done. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you.
Delegate Haley, if I might just add, the agencies that are left in here all accept State Highway and DNR, unless or until we hear from them otherwise, and we have not. They're presumed not to have pesticide management plans in place right now. They may or may not have, some of them, pollinator plans, but since we took that out, that piece out completely now, we're not hearing about that. And I can follow up with you offline.
Thank you so much. That concludes the bill hearing for HB 1342. Calling up now HB 1414, Building Energy Performance Standards, Public Safety, Emergency and Public Utility Buildings Exclusions, Safe Solutions Now Act of 2025. That's a mouthful, Mr.
It's because there's a lot of meaning to this bill. That's I had 17 witnesses. Because it's so late, I canceled them all for the benefit of all of you. So thank you, Madam Vice Chair, members of the Environment and Transportation Committee. For the record, I'm Delegate Wayne Hartman, here to present House Bill 1414, the Safe Solutions Now Act of 2025. The purpose of the legislation is to eliminate requirements from the Maryland Building Energy Performance Standards for government buildings 35,000 square feet and larger that are designated as public safety buildings, emergency storm shelters, or public utility buildings. Very specific purpose. The exemption is desperately needed for the purpose of resiliency in the event of an emergency situation. This is not about a gas company sitting next to me. I didn't know they were coming. I appreciate anyone being here in support. This is truly out of concern for resiliency in the event of a storm or a major event. While these standards do not apply to certain historic properties, public and non-public kindergarten through 12 school buildings, manufacturing buildings, agriculture buildings, or buildings owned by the federal government, there are no exceptions for buildings owned by state or local governments. I'm concerned that during a weather emergency or prolonged power outage, a reliance on solely electric could create significant concerns if we do not have the supply of fossil fuels in key buildings that are vital to allowing government to continue operations. This, again, is for buildings that are vital to continuing government operations. It is imperative that any building that is used for public safety purposes, designated as an emergency storm shelter provides public utilities is capable of being resilient during an emergency. Many covered buildings have existing infrastructure that allows them to produce their own heat and power in the event of an electric outage. Some of this existing equipment has a lifespan that will extend well beyond 2040, which is when these covered buildings would be required to meet the final building energy performance standards. This legislation will also be a cost-saving measure for our emergency services, such as larger police departments, fire stations, and emergency operations centers across the state. States along the East Coast experience hurricanes every year, which can result in power outages anywhere from a couple of days to a couple of weeks. Just recently, in October 2024, it was reported that thousands of people in North Carolina went without power for more than 2 weeks following Hurricane Helene. Hurricane Sandy in 2012 resulted in some Marylanders to be without power for roughly 9 days. Hurricane Maria, some for as long as over 100 days. Hurricane Katrina left some local utility companies 23 days to restore power to only 75% of the residents. Hurricane Irma, 100,000 people, 1% of the state remained without power more than 9 days later. And there's plenty of examples that I could continue on, but out of respect for time, I think you get the gist of this. On Maryland's coast, where the weather could be quite severe, visitors and citizens can rely on the Ocean City Convention Center to provide safety and be resilient during an emergency storm situation. This is just one example of a government building that can retain their existing power, provide their own heat and power during a disaster or other type of emergency, while the structure serves as a shelter to all the residents and tourists that could not evacuate. It's important to remember the Ocean City Inlet was created by a Category 4 hurricane. Back then, storms weren't named. It goes by the Chesapeake Potomac Hurricane, August 22nd, 1933. August, that's, imagine the number of people that could still be in town. That was one of the most wicked hurricane seasons with over 20 big storms in the North Atlantic. Our region is certainly prone to these types of major events. It's important that our critical buildings are as resilient as possible. To ensure that our state and local government can utilize existing equipment and be resilient during an emergency, I respectfully ask for a favorable report on HB 1414. Now, if you remember, we had a tornado that hit am I saying it right, La Plata? So it's just not a coastal situation. This is something that can affect any one of your districts. So I'd really appreciate your serious consideration of this. Thank you for your time.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Again, I'm Scott Waitlevich with Columbia Gas of Maryland, and we support House Bill 1414. The committee has more detailed written testimony outlining our support for the legislation, but as you know, I've testified a number of times on BEPS-related bills that are a serious concern. The regulation is a serious concern to our customers about the financial impact. So covered building owners of the BEPS regulations do include state and local governments, and I know I've spoken with a number of local governments in our service territory in Western Maryland, and of course they have concerns about the economic impact as well. So House Bill 1414, if passed, would reduce the significant financial impact for local governments currently faced if they own a building that falls under the BEPS regulations with the exemptions that the delegate has outlined. Certainly, emergency centers, public safety buildings, storm shelters, and public utility buildings should be under consideration for an exemption. So we believe that the requirements of House Bill 1414 are appropriately and reasonably crafted policies, reducing the financial impact of BEPS to local governments and taxpayers, and we would urge a favorable report.
Thank you so much. Does anyone have questions for Delegate Hartman or his guests? No? You sure?
I'll ask it later anyway. Thank you, Madam Chair. So my question to you, because I also grew up on the Gulf of Mexico and lived through many, many hurricanes growing up. So I understand your concern. I'm wondering, because I was not in place on this committee when the BEPS standards were initially passed, are there, and this might be a question of somebody else, are there any generators that would fall under the BEPS standards? Any other kind of generators?
When you say fall under, do you mean?
That would be appropriate under the current standards by the time we get to 2040.
Well, I would hope generators are an exclusion, or else we'd be really left with, in a bad situation. My concern is the supply of power to them for that extended amount of time and the amount of electricity that would need to be generated. For example, you hear of shelters that are overcrowded with people, and, the demand, the concern is just, meeting that demand and the longevity. And I think that's the real issue and concern. To me, this is not at all about a financial savings. If it was a financial savings to government, I would say any government building. This is out of concern for resiliency, being able to, endure a prolonged outage. And that's why we're asking for the exemption. You think about some utility generating, water, sewage, all that kind of stuff. I think they need to have the ability to go on in the event of a prolonged, extended, weather event or whatever.
Okay, thank you. I might do more research into that, or if somebody has some more information. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you so much. I see no other questions. There are no other witness. Thank you so much, Delegate Hartman. That concludes the bill hearing for HB 1414 and all the bill hearings for this evening. Subcommittees, Delegate Lewis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Land Use and Ethics Subcommittee will meet in 10 minutes virtually. No, I said 10. Yeah, we'll meet at 5:20 p.m. Thank you.
Delegate Stewart. Sorry, Mr. Pro Tem.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Let's see. The Environment Subcommittee will meet at 5:40.
Yeah. Motor vehicle, thank you, Madam Chair. The Motor Vehicle and Transportation Subcommittee will meet at 6. We have one especially important and large overlapping member with Environment, so we want to give him a little bit of flexibility. 6 o'clock, Motor Vehicle and Transportation. Thank you.
Anything else for the good of the order? We're adjourned.